And my question to the international community and Americans, how many kids? How many kids will it take for you to have your humanity? 3,000, 5,000, 10,000? How many babies do you need to see dead and pulled out of rubble for you to have basic human empathy and dignity as a human being? How many kids?
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. Israel's genocide in Gaza has shocked the world with an endless flow of videos and images of Palestinian children cut into pieces by American bombs, dropped by Israeli warplanes, deliberately intended to destroy a civilian population. Israeli leaders have said as much. Despite the explicitly genocidal rhetoric of Israeli officials, Western leaders continue to proclaim their support for Israel's right to defend itself. Over 2,000 Palestinian children have been slaughtered in the merciless carpet bombing of what amounts to a ghetto. Yet we're told by the mainstream corporate media that it's their fault for resisting their extermination. It's their fault for hating Israel. It's their fault, we're even told, because actually they bombed themselves. But this war on Gaza is different than past wars, not only in the scale of Israeli aggression, but in the reaction on the street, from the Middle East to the United States. While Western media runs cover for Israeli atrocities, people are losing their jobs across various industries for speaking out. The suppression has never been this intense. Yet still, Israel is losing the narrative war. Most people want to see a ceasefire, and tens of thousands have protested across the US to demonstrate their opposition to Biden's unconditional support for this genocide. Joining me to discuss Israel's genocidal onslaught in Gaza and how it has the potential to snowball into a catastrophic regional war, I'm joined by journalist Abby Martin, creator and host of the Empire Files. Abby Martin, welcome, because obviously we're going to be talking about the horrific genocide that's taking place in Gaza. And I just want to clarify, we are recording this before there has been a ground invasion, but obviously every day, every hour, that could change. So if that has happened after this goes out, just keep that in mind as you watch this. But anyways, Abby, I guess there's so much to discuss. You've done so much journalism on the issue of Palestine, both on the ground and away. And I want to start off by asking you about your documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom, which was released in 2019. And that was 4 years ago. And it's an excellent documentary for anybody who hasn't watched it. I encourage you to go check it out after you've watched this episode. I will include a link to it in the description. And it's still making a huge impact to help people understand the situation that Gaza is in, which has obviously gotten significantly worse in the last 2 weeks. But can you maybe start out by telling our audience, what is Gaza Fights for Freedom about, and why does it still matter as we witness the atrocities being committed against Gaza right now?
Well, Ronnie, I think everyone has that light bulb moment. Mine was the Gaza flotilla massacre in 2010 when Israeli commandos, jumped on a ship in international waters and just executed, I think, 9 peace activists, 1 American citizen. And then, of course, the fog of war coming out of that attack was literally apologizing and whitewashing this massacre. And I think that really woke me up to, wow, something is very, very wrong with what we're being told with this so-called Israel-Palestine conflict. And then, everything compounded as I started working with Palestinians. And every time Israel would go on one of their bombardments of Gaza every couple of years, bombing people in essentially a caged area, my friends and colleagues that were Palestinian had to check in every couple hours to see if their families were dead or alive. And it was just so harrowing and so horrifying. Fast forward to the Great March of Return. This was, I think, when Mike and I went to the occupied West Bank in 2017. This was a year before Palestinians in Gaza decided to do this mass civil disobedience action where for 18 months, they were going out every single Friday, tens of thousands at the beginning. And then it kind of whittled down into just thousands of people. I mean, this was a consistent, determined action, completely unarmed. Men, women, children, medics, journalists, all of these people went out. It was in no way directed or engineered by Hamas, this cartoonish depiction of Hamas, stage managing everything in Gaza and taking away Palestinians' agency. It was devised by a poet named Ahmed Artema, who just simply wanted to kind of do this peaceful action where he was drawing attention to their plight as refugees. And it was mostly symbolic, to erect tents and basically call attention to their plight as refugees and show the international community, look, we're still here generations later as besieged refugees, ethnically cleansed, right from this partition where our ancestral lands are just right there. We can see them, that we can't go to them. And I think we know what happened, Rania, is that Israeli snipers perched up on hilltops just took everyone out, looking at people, civilians, through their scopes, their sniper scopes, and took out journalists, medics, children.
On November 2nd, 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, wrote a letter that would set off a conflict still being fought more than 100 years later.
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object.
When Balfour wrote of his government's intent to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, 90% of the people living there were not Jewish. Just 31 years later, most of them were gone.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים.
This is the story of the British promise that led to the destruction of Palestine and the creation of the State of Israel. Let's start with the obvious question. Why were the British making promises about other people's countries? The short answer, empire is one hell of a drug. This was World War I, and the British were making lots of promises. In addition to promising a Jewish homeland in Palestine, they promised Arab leaders independence if they rose up against Britain's enemy, the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs did. Hollywood even made a movie about it.
Arabia's for the Arabs now. That's what I've told them anyway. That's what they think. That's why they're fighting.
Oh, surely.
A month after Balfour's letter, British troops took Palestine, ending 400 years of Ottoman rule. The people who lived there were Arabs, mostly Muslims, but there were Christian and Jewish minorities too. There was also a tiny number of European Jews who in the late 1800s had started building small colonies there. At a time when many Jews were suffering horrific persecution in Europe, they felt Palestine could be an escape. The idea of building up a Jewish presence in Palestine became known as Zionism, but it stayed a fringe movement among European Jews. Many of them felt they shouldn't have to leave their countries to avoid persecution. But Zionism as a political movement took a big step forward with an Austrian man called Theodor Herzl. And this guy is a very important name in this story. In 1896, he published Der Judenstaat, or in English, the Jewish State. In it, he said the only way for Jews to avoid Europe's anti-Semitism was not just to leave, but to have their own country. And Herzl didn't just write. The next year, he organized a conference in Basel, Switzerland, the first Zionist Congress. The attendees agreed on a program which sought, among other things, to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine and promote Jewish settlement in Palestine. From here on out, the Zionist movement became very active, setting up funds to promote Jewish immigration to Palestine, companies to buy land there, and recruiting representatives to advocate for their cause with different governments. A few days after the conference, Herzl wrote this in his diary.
At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. In 5 years, perhaps, and certainly in 50 years, everyone will perceive it.
He was only off by 1 year. Okay, so that is a lot of history, but it's important because the Zionist movement is a critical part of the story going forward. especially after it found a friend in the British government, where a lot of high-ranking officials supported Zionism, sometimes for unexpected reasons. Prime Minister Lloyd George, for example, was a Christian zealot who believed gathering the Jewish people in Palestine would bring Jesus Christ back to earth. Others, like Balfour, believed that getting the Jewish people out of Europe and into their own country would be a good thing. Herzl was pretty visionary when he wrote that the anti-Semitic nations will become our allies. Meanwhile, the Zionists assured Britain that their future country would be a reliable ally. So that's the backstory of how European anti-Semitism, Zionism, and British imperialism all led to the Balfour Declaration, this British promise to build a homeland for Jews in Palestine. Now we're going to look at how Britain did that. World War I had been a conflict between rival empires, and the winners set up the League of Nations to distribute the losing side's territories between them. They called it the Mandate System, putting territories once controlled by the Ottoman and German empires under the, quote, tutelage of advanced nations until they became independent. Britain was given the mandate over Palestine, but the Palestinian people were never asked what they wanted or what independence would look like to them. Listen to what Balfour wrote to one of his colleagues.
For in Palestine, we do not propose even to go through the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country.
Instead, it was the Zionists who were consulted about what their vision for Palestine was, and so the mandate ended up incorporating not just the Balfour Declaration, but several clauses requiring Britain to ensure the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine. British rule was very accommodating to the Zionist project. The Jewish community in Palestine grew with big waves of immigration. They had their own schools and factories and even their own militia, the Haganah, and they were led by the Polish-born David Ben-Gurion, the leader of their representative body, the Jewish Agency. To the Palestinians, it was clear that Britain wasn't delivering them independence. It was delivering their country to other people. In 1936, they went on strike. British forces tried to break the strike with arrests, torture, mass punishment, and executions. Leaders were exiled, weapons confiscated, and houses blown up. Palestinian fighters attacked British and Jewish targets, while British and Haganah forces would carry out joint raids on Palestinian villages. Something had to change. The British government sent a commission called the Peel Commission to figure it out, but their proposed solution was typical. Just draw another British line on the map, divide the country, give this part to the Jews and this part to the Palestinians, and make that part of Transjordan next door. Oh, and because the Palestinians were a majority in the country, 250,000 of them would have to be removed by force to make the Jewish state viable. Remember, these were the proposals that were meant to calm things down. Spoiler, they didn't. Instead, the revolt continued until 1939. By which time about 10% of Palestine's adult male population had either been killed, injured, arrested, or exiled. The British government really needed a solution. So here comes another report.
The commission is studying the 20-year-old Jewish settlements in British-mandated Palestine.
The 1939 white paper created a conflict between the British and the Zionists for the first time, because it rejected partition and said the solution was for Palestine to gain independence within 10 years, with everyone living there sharing it together. Crucially, it also imposed severe limits on Jewish land purchases and immigration.
You've been on our show a number of times telling us what's happening at these Ivy League universities. We've heard Pete Hegseth talk about it because he's Princeton and Harvard. And we've heard this. But when you actually see these rallies, you see 7,000 people spewing this pro-Hamas message on the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday. And you actually get a visual that this is happening. You know, we've been told it's happening, but you don't believe it's happening at this level. So when you see these images, what comes to mind? And you hear what they're saying. At Cornell, they're posting online for the Jewish Center calling to slit the throats of Jewish students. I mean, it's so evil and hateful.
Well, also, you look at the UN Secretary General's comments last Wednesday, drawing a false equivalence between Hamas's attacks on Israel and Israel's national self-defense. It reinforces that same norm. But here's my deeper view. Without, as disgusting as that is, there's something deeper to see about what's going on here. History teaches us that anti-Semitism, it's a symptom of a deeper void in a culture. And so as leaders, it's our job to take a step back and say that, especially young people in this country, they are lost. They are starved for direction, starved for the things that they used to miss: faith, patriotism, hard work, family. And yes, we have wokeism and transgenderism fill the void. Now we see anti-Semitism fills that void too. So I think it's a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life, and we have to revive our own identity. And I think that melts away a lot of these toxic poisons in response.
Yet another shocking video shining a light on the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. Take a look at this demonstration near Tulane University in New Orleans, turning violent after a masked pro-Palestinian protester tries to burn an Israeli flag. Joining us now is the man who filmed that video, Tulane student Ryan Zamos. Ryan, thanks for being with us this morning. I take it you were there that day. Tell us what's going on in Tulane. What's happening there?
Yeah, it was terrifying. Tulane University allowed for a pro-Palestinian protest to occur, and they did not take the preventative measures that were necessary, such as shutting down the street. So the car, as you see on the screen, drove by 4 times previously, and it was on the 5th time that they attempted to burn the flag before students attempted to grab the flag, before, as you see, pro-Palestinian protesters come in and assault numerous students.
So are these, tell me who I'm looking at on the screen. Like when I see this, you know, whatever college campus I'm looking at, in this case, Tulane, I also understand these weren't necessarily students from Tulane. So like who is involved in all of these incidences?
Correct. So nearby universities such as Loyola New Orleans is organizing these protests under the name Tulane for Palestine, because Tulane is a 44% Jewish population of students. So it seems like they're specifically targeting such a university to, you know, promote hate and to antagonize Jewish students and to frankly scare us and make it so that we're afraid to go to class. And it's deeply concerning.
Okay, President Biden's approval has taken a nosedive among his own party. Peter Ducey is live at the White House with all of that. So what's going on, Peter?
Aisha, the Democratic mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, is really boiling down the dissent, writing this. So many in our Dearborn community carry the scars of war in our memories and our bodies. Countless community members, including members of my own family, know the horrors of Israeli military brutality firsthand, and watching that brutality unfold has revived traumas that never left. Still, nothing could have prepared us for the complete erasure of our voices and radio silence from those whom we elected to protect and represent us. Just since last month, President Biden has shed 4 points among all adults in the Gallup poll, down to 37%, but he's lost 11% of Democrats too, from 86 down to 75.
His approval rating among Democrats fell sharply after the October 7th attack in Israel and his subsequent comments that we will stand with Israel. Why? Gallup found earlier this year in its polling that for the first time ever, more Democrats had sympathies towards Palestinians and Israelis.
And there's no reason to think the White House plans to soften their stance on a ceasefire for political reasons. They are sympathetic to Israel's plans to take out Hamas terrorists. They are not sympathetic to anybody blaming Israel for October 7th.
We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful. Our condemnation belongs squarely with terrorists who have brutally murdered, raped, kidnapped hundreds of Israelis. There can be no equivocation about that.
Moral equivalency here, because there is not.
We need to commit ourselves to ensure that good defeats evil.
When I'm back in the White House, the United States will stand with Israel all the way, 100%.
If Israel wants to destroy Hamas, Israel should go ahead and destroy Hamas.
We will never feel ashamed of our support of the Palestinian people. We will never be harassed into silence.
Black student organizers at Harvard are being attacked by Zionist and right-wing forces for their support of Palestine. Their faces are being shown on trucks around campus, accusing them of being anti-Semites.
Well, okay, actually, can we fill that in right there? The reason that those trucks are on campus is because a bunch of student groups signed a statement blaming Israel for the massacre of Jews and backing Hamas. That would be the reason. That would be the actual reason.
But despite these efforts to derail their organizing, they say they will not be deterred.
We resolutely stand in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance against the apartheid state that is Israel. It is genocide of the Palestinian people right now. Shamefully, it is primarily Black and Arab students that are facing the brunt of these racist attacks.
Oh, I mean, I feel terrible for you. I feel so terrible for you. You're leading a terrible life. I mean, you're the subject of such racist attacks. I mean, not like the babies who were burned to death in the Gaza envelope, but really, it's been very rough for you when people actually show your face on a billboard and say that you hate Jews when you're clearly standing for a terrorist group. I feel so terrible for you. Ugh, the horror. Ugh, the victimization.
But none of that changes our solidarity with Palestine. We believe in a free Palestine from the river to the sea.
Ah, there it is. From the river to the sea. The river to the sea, by the way, is extermination of Israel. It's the Jordan River, the Mediterranean Sea. That means no Jews, all dead. That's what that means.
The leaders of past resistance movements never cowered and never shied away. We are here today to do the exact same.
Okay, well, that's fine. You just don't have to work for any big law firm. That's okay. It seems to me that if you are a big business, if you are a legal firm, you have no obligation to hire people who support baby murderers.
Tulane. Ryan, what about that hateful language? When these protests, these pro-Palestinian protests take place, I think something that always people wonder is like, distinguish you're for Palestine, you're anti-Jewish. You know, like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing involved in these rallies and parades?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as Tulane has to take a firm stance against hate rather than remaining neutral. We've seen other universities leaders, such as the UF president, speaking out and calling out facts. And there's simply no tiptoeing around the fact that what Hamas is evil, and there's no defense for terrorism. So these protests, they're not pro-Palestinian, they're anti-Jewish and anti-Israel.
And do you hear that or see that, Ryan, at the protests?
Correct. There's plenty of anti-Semitism slurs shouted at students. The signage that's used is directly targeting Jewish students for the removal of all Jews from basically worldwide and primarily Israel. It's just deeply concerning that there's a lack of accountability in handling Jewish students' concerns about their safety, as evidence from whether it be unresponsive emails when students face threats, or emails following protests such as this that are just kind of covering their liability moving forward.
Ryan, you just said, I didn't realize, by the way, that Tulane is 44% Jewish. So you have that community. Are you surprised? I've seen the polling. Young people much more supportive of Palestinians than you might, definitely than older generations. So Gen Z more so than millennials more so than Gen X, and on and on and on. Does that surprise you for your age demographic?
Yeah, it's terrifying, frankly, and it's deeply concerning that Tulane University is allowing pro-Palestinian students to issue these mutual non-contact orders. I think this is kind of a global trend that's being used from as low as the middle school level. I know I'm from Los Angeles, so in Manhattan Beach, students are being issued these summons where they're basically just issuing these non-contact orders to silence and harass Jewish students to prevent open dialogue. And, it's clear whose side that they're on and who they're willing to protect. And I think it's a matter of what Hamas did is evil and there's no defense. And we must protect Jewish students so that they feel safe to go to school and go to class and feel like the university has their back. Many of these non-contact orders that have been issued have been between students who have never spoken to each other, who have never had any form of communication. And so it's scary to go to class and know that these students are present everywhere in classrooms with us.
All right.
I'm stunned seeing in Columbia. I'm stunned seeing in Cornell. You're the freshest out of college. It was 10 years ago for you or 15 years ago for you. Was this the mission that you heard on campus?
This is a big part of what I exposed in Woke Inc., Brian. It is the denigration of our culture. And anti-Semitism, it is the natural extension of the self-loathing culture that these universities have propagated. So back when I was on campus, no, it was 2003 to 2007. It wasn't this bad, but this was the direction that things were going. And when you have a generation of young people, you tell them to go to Ben & Jerry's and order a cup of ice cream with some anti-Semitic sprinkles on top, it's no surprise that that's what they then spew back out. They're lost for purpose and meaning. So I don't think the right answer, Brian, is censorship. I know that's the direction that some may want to go. The right answer is leadership of these young people. Fill that vacuum of purpose and meaning. That's really what's missing amongst young Americans. And as a young person in this race, that's my job to actually do this.
America's universities have been
Welcome to another episode of the Post-Duopoly Show. I'm one of your hosts representing RBN. I'm CJ. What's up, Russell? And what's up, Kit?
Cheers. What's up? Cheers and salutations. So good to be back here. The people demanded it, and you know what? We cannot ignore the will of the people.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had. Now, for those that, why is it only 3? The other 2 will be here. They're just running a little bit late. Nick had some internet problems, and Keaton was at a protest march, so he'll be running late. But this is the first time the 5 of us are back in a well over, I think it's almost 2 months since the 5 of us has been all together.
All 5,
but
yeah.
I'm glad we're here, even if we're not here at the same time. Go ahead, Kit. It sounds like you're gonna.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of housework and some other personal work as well. Professional housework has just been. I'm like butter stretched on too much bread, man. I only could take so much. So sometimes I'm just burnt out, and I just gotta lay my head down, or I'm no good to nobody.
Folks
who watch both shows already know, but for anyone who doesn't, I'm not, I'm not trying to be disrespectful here. I injured myself, so I'm going to take it a little laid back today. That's why I'm all doing the Ironsides Professor X thing here. All right, Professor, don't worry, we got your back. Worked out a little too hard. See, I got to talk to Nick, man. We got to barter some personal training or something. As you should, man. But hey, take it easy, man. Because we all need our Russell, man. If we don't have Russell to bring in humor, the world becomes a bleak, dark place, and I ain't having that. All right, we got enough depression as it is.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. We started out with that intro clip, and that's actually going to be our warm up here. We're going to warm up with this topic, and the topic is basically the worldwide protest and the establishment reaction. And I just put a mashup because there was just too many clips. In particular, Fox News covers this topic where they're upset at this pro-Palestinian protest, what they call pro-Hamas or anti-Israel demonstration. And Ben Shapiro is one of those commentators that has been going pretty ham on this issue, and this was just one of them. So I do want to rewind it just a little bit, and let's listen to the points that are made here, and then we'll take it from there.
In Tulane, I'm stunned seeing in Columbia. I'm stunned seeing in Cornell. You're the freshest out of college. It was 10 years ago for you or 15 years ago for you. Was this the mission that you heard on campus?
This is a big part of what I exposed in Woke Inc., Brian. It is the denigration of our culture. And anti-Semitism, it is the natural extension of the self-loathing culture that these universities have propagated. So back when I was on campus, no, it was 2003 to 2007. It wasn't this bad, but this was the direction that things were going. And when you have a generation of young
people, what I'm always confused on these topics this topic about school. And this is a long time coming. Started hearing about families started hearing about homeschooling kids as a huge thing. When I was working in Orange County out here in California, which I had never understood. But you hear a lot of homeschooling. you hear a lot of the colleges are doing something to our kids, and I've never been able to pinpoint tangibly what exactly are they talking about. What are they referring? They think that there's some sort of Marxist teacher that's teaching math.
No,
What do you guys know what they're referring to? I'm sure maybe you may know a little more on this topic than me, but what exactly are they referring to when they were saying this? How are they being indoctrinated? Go ahead, Russ.
Go ahead, Russ. You shoot first.
Yeah, they're not wrong, but they have their own agenda. And really what's happening now is a lot of what's been going on college campuses being taken to its logical conclusion. They're not wrong about that. It's just that I'm heartened by the fact that this ended up being the conclusion, because that's not what I expected. So to explain, you after the collapse within academia of Marxism, of economic Marxism, they shifted more towards what we would usually call identity politics. They borrowed a little bit from postmodern theory, although admirers of the originators of postmodernism will be eager to point out, and I agree, they kind of took what they wanted from it in order to justify their agenda. And they turned academia in many ways into activism with a point of view and an agenda. And it's, you know, I mean, I'm sure just being in activist circles, you're familiar with a very willful rejection of a traditional kind of age of enlightenment, rationalist approach, which I think had defined a lot of the civil rights and social justice movements up until about the 90s. And I think the overall ethos could be defined as universal liberalism, the idea that we have more in common than not, that our common humanity binds us, content of your character, and so on.
Is that so? That's like a description, Russell, of the type of person. Because what I feel, just sort of analyzing this, is that there's a certain type of person that goes into education, and maybe that's sort of what they're referring to. There's a certain type. I mean, I you know, just from speaking for maybe I know maybe 8 or 9 teachers, people that went to high school that are actual teachers now. My brother used to be a substitute teacher. Like I know it's a lot of teachers. I think you used to teach, Russ, or maybe you still do, but it's a certain like even including you, Russell. It's a certain type of person who's willing to let another person have their own ideas that goes into this sort of field. That a person who's willing to go, I believe this, and throw it out there to at least talk about it. It's a certain type of person. Like I see the person who goes into schooling, liberal arts, or I want to be professor. They all seem to have a sort of liberal bent. You get what I'm saying? So is it the type of people that's doing this, or are they going there being changed? You get what I'm saying? Or are they already that person before they get there?
Well, for one thing, whether you think this is a good or a bad thing, it used to be, in keeping with what you're saying, it used to be about 70% of academics were liberal and about 30% were conservative. And now it's about 90-10. And that has created an atmosphere where there is absolutely no pushback on any of these ideas. My personal overall analysis on what's commonly been termed woke, you know, very broadly speaking, is that a lot of the underlying ideas like intersectionality, critical race theory, a lot of these ideas, if you go back to the originating texts, are not bad ideas. But they really got seized by corporations as a means of making people divide up along identity lines and to divert people away from any focus on economics or class. And that's how you wound up with an entire generation that thinks that who you like to fuck constitutes a politics. That's not a politics. But they've been convinced that that is the way to express yourself politically, to which I have always responded, if it were any threat to power, they wouldn't put it on the side of a Starbucks cup.
No.
You ever see a hammer and sickle on the side of a Starbucks cup?
No.
You never will.
Nope.
You never will. They put that on the side because they want youthful rebellion is the greatest threat to establishment power. So they picked up and elevated a bunch of, in my opinion, crackpot hustling academics who were looking to sell books and make a name for themselves by being as outrageous and controversial as possible. They elevated them because it suited their purposes to put these people out front who were preaching a very divisive, very warped version of some very good ideas. Now, when I look at this, and this has been the angle we've been seeing it from, very much the opposite of Vivek. Because, yes, some of Vivek and some of the other, what we would call right-wing commentators' critique of this school of thought is not completely off base, but they have their own purposes. We just saw this week where DeSantis wants to shut down speech in Florida. Nick tweeted out, you see, they never really cared about free speech. It's true. So while they might have a valid critique of this type of academia, they're only elevating this for their own purposes, and their purposes as well are to distract from economics, right? There's a mutual interest in talking about this bullshit and distorting these core ideas of critical theory. But they created a Frankenstein. They never saw this coming. They spent 10, 20 years telling kids in these schools, decolonize your mind, decolonize the curriculum, decolonize the canon. It never occurred to them that if a colonial war broke out that they wanted to back, that after telling them for 20 years to decolonize, that these kids were not just going to go along with the narrative. And that is why you're seeing, in my opinion, you have not seen this kind of conflict between the establishment and not just youth. You're talking the youth at the elite universities. You're talking about the youth who were being trained
like
to
Vietnam.
replace. Exactly.
This is like
Exactly.
Vietnam,
It's like
yeah.
Vietnam. Exactly.
Precisely.
Go ahead,
Well,
kid. Go ahead, kid. I know you've been itching to chime in. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Russell. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
Yeah,
Russell, go ahead, kid.
Finish your thought. Okay, well, listen, I do want to hand it back to Russell because I mean he's breaking everything down perfectly. But let's look at the imagery here because again, Russell did a fantastic job in talking about the academic part. But look at the imagery of what we're seeing on social media, the absolute destruction that's taking place in Gaza. It cannot be denied what we are witnessing here, and that is a full-on extermination. Now,
right.
The situation that took place October 7th, I'm going to keep my opinions to myself. I don't want this channel to get flagged on YouTube, but I mean, I find just how it all took place very suspicious with all those cameras and everything else, but that's about it. It's how the intel services didn't see this coming, and weapons in Ukraine also being found there supposedly is a whole other Pandora's box altogether. But when we see women and children, civilian centers being destroyed, and the pushback from people in Europe, in America, in Canada, people are saying, hey, call for a ceasefire. And we have our own liberal politicians, including AOC, Bernie Sanders, Fetterman, all the heavyweights, all trying to tiptoe around the issue, but can't really say anything because they know that they take their marching orders from the Democratic establishment. And of course, yes, AOC and the squad have asked the Biden-Harris administration to do a ceasefire, and yet that's not taking place. But the people are seeing this, and no one wants to witness firsthand an extermination of the people. But that's what we are seeing here in Gaza. That is what we are seeing with the bombings that are taking place. And in many ways, the establishment and corporate media, they really can't push back what they used to do in the 90s and early 2000s. All of that is gone. All of that charisma, all of that, I guess, goodwill of the populace, or assuming that people would fall in line, has evaporated due to so many other factors, because we have saw how our politicians and our establishment have constantly been lying to us and manipulating us for decades on end. It's just not going to work. And I'm rather surprised to be honest, the amount of pushback we are seeing from people who are saying, hey, call for a ceasefire. Because I guess when Biden got into office, just from my perspective, I assume the anti-war movement and all these other activist groups just died down and disappeared. They all just laid down their arms because for many of them, it's unthinkable to protest against Biden. But here they are. I kind of want to know where they were at the whole time, but I guess better now than never. And everyone's seeing that Biden can be just as heartless as Donald Trump. Dare I say it, even worse than Donald Trump when it comes down to a global crisis where not only that, we have Janet Yellen saying we could afford 2 wars. So there we go. We have the money for that.
All right, so I'm gonna let it play for a little while, and we're gonna comment before we move to the next segment. And let's go.
People, you tell them to go to Ben & Jerry's and order a cup of ice cream with some anti-Semitic sprinkles on top. It's no surprise that that's what they then spew back out. They're lost for purpose and meaning. So I don't think the right answer, Brian, is censorship. I know that's the direction that some may want to go. The right answer is leadership of these young people. Fill that vacuum of purpose and meaning.
Right. Let's get into the Ben Shapiro
video. And as a young person in this race, that's my job to actually do.
America's universities have been a garbage heap for decades, but donors have been looking the other way because, after all, they love their alum associations. They love giving back. And now here's the problem. At a certain point, the rubber hits the road, and it turns out the people you're donating to hate your guts. The interpolation of terrorist supporters in the West continues apace. You know, the reality, which is that there are a lot of people who support terrorism and anti-Semitism all over the globe, that is not relegated to foreign countries. That is very true here in the United States as well, which is why you are starting to see some donors at major American universities look at the universities and realize exactly what it is that they've done. The universities have full-scale embraced the decolonization narrative. That narrative started with people like Franz Fanon back in the 1950s and 1960s, claiming
what can be the ramifications, Russell, of donors not donating as much money to universities. Does it change, like, I guess it would change scholarships, but outside of that, like, does it change what teachers can be hired, how much they are paid? Like, do you know any details about that? Go ahead.
Well, this is the dimension of it that Ben Shapiro and Vivek are not identifying, either out of ignorance or because it doesn't fit the narrative that they want to pump up, because they hated the whole idea of decolonization and everything. For anybody who knows the nuances of what goes on the left, broadly speaking, the fake left, the real left, all of that, what they're not addressing is the establishment left, the Democrats, the so-called left. This is Frankenstein turning around to kill its creator, because they fed them. He's not wrong about this. They fed them all this decolonization stuff, never expecting it to amount to anything. That's what he's not going to address. That's the perspective he lacks. They loved encouraging them to embrace that narrative as long as it wasn't going to cut. What did they do? Did they defund the police? No, they increased the police funding. You can go have your BLM cakewalk through the middle of town. They didn't give a fuck about that. Now, you have not only encouraged them to see things through a very different lens regarding colonial powers attacking native peoples, but you have also encouraged them to march, and you have also, frankly, encouraged political violence. There has been a lot of political violence in the name of causes that they believe in. Riley Gaines, she's an activist against transgender athletes in women's sports, and whatever you think about that. There was a big incident where they had her trapped in a classroom for 3 hours. This is a few months ago. We covered this. Nobody got arrested. Nobody got expelled. Brett Weinstein, when he got driven out of Evergreen College by rioting students, nobody got arrested. Nobody got expelled. So now, yes, legitimately, right here in New York, Cooper Union, they had Jewish students trapped inside of a library, and they're showing all of these videos. Oh my God, this is so horrible. Well, okay, you've been encouraging this for years. You have been sending the message to these students that that is an appropriate way to handle political disagreement. And you didn't mind as long as it was not messing with your agenda. You liked it, right? Because it was keeping them fighting over shit you don't even care about. Like they care who swims, right? Like they care about who uses what bathroom. They don't give a shit. Now, the monster is coming off the table and coming back to attack the people who made it. And that's a subtlety they're not going to address. Even if they understand that, it doesn't fit their narrative because they want to hang this on the Democrats. This is not what the Democrats want. Clearly, they're up there.
Not at all.
And they can't control it either. And
they lost control of it. And you can see how desperate they are. Biden talking about cracking down using the power of the federal government. I mean, this is scaring the living shit out of them. And this is their own, exactly like Vietnam. These are not just kids from SUNY. These are kids from Harvard. Mm-hmm. These are kids from UPenn. This is scaring the shit out of them. But it's you can't tell people for 20 years that it's bad when European colonizers, and look, man, I mean, you look at Netanyahu, that cat's not from the Middle East. I'm sorry. You look at these European colonizers beating up on these. They're putting out all this. I don't know if you're getting this on YouTube. I'm getting all these Israeli ads trying to talk about. I
haven't looked at it to notice. I haven't even.
Man,
it out. I'm gonna do that.
It's so sleazy because they're getting these beautiful women, and I'm looking at it. And I'm like, you're just reinforcing the point, man, because they look like Polish girls with a tan to me.
Yeah,
they don't look like no Middle Eastern girls that you're putting in these.
Don't fall for it. She's too pretty. She's too pretty, and she won't be into you, man.
I don't know a lot of Semitic people with blonde hair and blue eyes, man. I don't think it goes down that way. So you're just kind of reinforcing the point.
Right.
But they've spent decades telling them rightly, hey, look at Fanon, look at Edward Said, look at the consequences for the people who are colonized of colonization. And then you expect them to all line up behind an occupation and a genocide. How did you think these kids were going to react? It was just too much cognitive dissonance. And I will say, as somebody who has critiqued the identity politics, and I've always said when we've critiqued it, not because I disagree with the core idea, but because of the way it's being used and because the people who are espousing it, their politics are a mile wide and an inch deep. They don't mean any of this shit. Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing now is making me eat my words. This actually redeems a lot of that movement in my eyes, personally.
Also, it's important to note, too, that the fact that the Democrats are, okay, let me start over again. Sorry about that. Just, again, Russell, you're hitting a lot of the points. But the fact that, we've been saying to our audiences and anyone that was maybe critical of us as well, that the Democrats are not your friends. The Democrats have shown, for a matter of fact, that they are just as warlike and just as indifferent in regards towards corruption, abuse of power, and so much more. And the fact that we see, that, or at least maybe hopefully these protesters, these young people do see for the fact that, look, AOC is not your friend. Biden's not going to listen to you. Bernie is going to be a cuck. They never believed in a damn thing that they said, and maybe people now are waking up to the fact that, oh, geez, if I vote Democrat, nothing's going to change. Because I have to ask you two this. Can you imagine the absolute pushback if Trump was in office and this was happening under his watch? Because I know for a fact so many people would be out there in the streets right now.
Yeah, it'd probably be a lot more.
This is happening under Biden's administration, and this is putting a lot of people who are vote blue no matter who, or were bullied into voting for Biden, or who are liberals or anything of that matter, into a very interesting little quandary. This is exactly the same thing Trump would have done. Maybe he would have held it back more so, but the fact that it's happening under Biden, it's taking away everything that they said in 2020. Nothing is different. In fact, it's far more frightening because the Democrats are saying, like, okay, They're telling Israel, hey, ceasefire, please, pretty please. Please don't punch that person in the face. Please don't break their skull open. Oh, you're breaking their skull open. This is so terrible. There's nothing I can do. Oh, gee willigers. Maybe this will wake people up. So if you're a liberal, if you've been critical to due dissidents, Hard Lens Media, or RBN, it's okay. We welcome you. Finally, you see the Democrats for who they are. You don't have to be scared of the orange boogeyman. It doesn't matter. You don't have to rely on electoral politics anymore. We welcome you in. Finally, hopefully you see the light, because nothing is different under a Democratic president or a Republican president. And hopefully people do wake up to that fact. That would be a sight to see. Hopefully that will be the conclusion that everyone sees with the amount of pushback these protesters are getting.
All right, gentlemen. Let me get through this. Now this is some good stuff coming up. I'm gonna play this part and then move to a different video before we close this segment.
And they are rising up against the institutions of the West. It's not an attack on Israel. It's an attack on Western institutions as Western institutions. A lot of people who are sort of liberal, hollow men, fellow travelers, were fine with this for a long time because they thought, okay, well, we also, we don't love the institutions, and it buys us some street cred with the left wing if we pretend along. The hollow men, fellow travelers, the people that Tom Wolfe described in a very famous essay written in the late 1960s called Radical Chic, that party at Lenny's, which was all about Leonard Bernstein.
Now, what do you know, Russell, about this book, Radical Chic, that he's referring to?
I have that right up behind me. Radical Chic is funny, man. You should read that. It's very, very interesting. It's Tom Wolfe was a really great kind of observational journalist. And it's about, Leonard Bernstein, the composer. So he's, a New York liberal guy. And back then, you would have all these very rich Upper East Side Manhattanites who would, invite Black Panthers and have a fundraiser for them. Mm-hmm. And I believe that essay coined the phrase radical chic. And it was describing these very wealthy people who like to be in the company of radicals, but it was a performance, and that essay captures that very well. Like the way they described Leonard Bernstein behaving with these Black Panthers, and the way the Black Panthers try to negotiate that. When you read something and you get embarrassed, even though you're not in this situation, like Leonard Bernstein, he yells at the Black Panthers, "Does it bother you that you're living there in the ghetto and we're living here like this?" And, they're trying to get money out of these people, so they can't be like, damn right. So, they give a very diplomatic answer. They're trying to defuse it. He's, well, it makes me angry. I would highly recommend it. It's two essays. It's Radical Chic and Mowing the Flak Catchers.
Right on. All right, so let's listen to this part of the same video. I have different parts marked, so let's listen to what he says here.
Press.
Actually, Hamas started this whole thing. Remember October 7th? Actually, that's wrong. Before October 7th, Israeli security forces killed 248 Palestinians, and 40 of them were children, and that was just this year. And if you want to go back further than that, we can look at the recent history of war crimes committed by the Israeli government. Operation Protective Edge in 2014, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, Operation Cast Lead in 2009.
What started each one of those operations? Islamic barrages of rockets into civilian centers in Israel. That's what started each one of these operations. I love this moron. I guess the idea here is that, if you point out that what has caused the current conflict is the massacre of 1,500 Jews. Like, well, before that, Israel killed other Palestinians. You're like, yeah, but why would they do that? And the answer is because they were associated with terrorist groups. And he's like, yeah, but what about the conflict before? Oh, you mean because the terrorists were firing rockets into Israel? It's an infinite regress of dumb here. Just name a bunch of operations without actually explaining why the operations were initiated.
Yeah, but you don't mention why Cast Lead happened. Hamas fired rockets into Israel. And that was because Israel broke the ceasefire agreement they had on November 4th, 2008, while the entire world was in euphoria over the United States electing its first Black president, Barack Obama. Israel used the opportunity to break the ceasefire agreement and raid Gaza and kill Palestinians.
For no reason, they're just raiding Gaza, just for fun. They just raid Gaza. To do what exactly? To steal their nothing? What would the raid in?
I have to believe at this point.
Keaton's backstage.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have to believe. Here goes Keaton. I have to believe that it's because I find it hard for people not to understand, specifically a younger person, not to understand this perspective, and it's just hard for me to believe that Ben Shapiro believes some of the things that he's saying if he wasn't making a lot of money for what he does. It just doesn't feel like anybody at his age should have this sort of outlook, because it's anti-history, it's anti, chronological history, is anti factual. It's almost like in order to have this sort of opinion, you have to be a person who only watches legacy media and don't have the internet and don't have other friends who are, you get what I'm saying? It's just bizarre for me. A person at his age could still be in this place. Now, before I move, and we're gonna introduce Keaton is here. What's up, Keaton? Let me bring down the video.
Oh,
how did the protests go, Keaton?
It was good. It was it's very intense. I mean, they had a lot of speakers, and then they had a march. And it was in Troy, New York, which is right across the river from Albany. So it's sort of like the Brooklyn to Albany, right? If Albany's Manhattan, Troy's like the Brooklyn, although Troy is smaller than Albany.
Troy is the Brooklyn of Albany these days, huh?
Yeah, well, it actually is. I mean, parts of Troy are really nice now, especially down by the water where they had this. And so, yeah, there were a lot of speakers. There was a little over an hour worth of speakers, and then a march, and then, people were hanging out and, talking after the march. And so, yeah, it was great. I was definitely grateful that I got to go to one. I certainly hope to go to more. It was intense, man. There was this guy there. He was a Palestinian guy. I have video of it. I filmed almost all of the speakers. And he said, I have family in Gaza, big family, 16 or so people. They kept telling me, over the past year, are you going to come see us before we die? And turns out some of them died in these recent air raids. And some of them are in intensive care in a hospital that Israel has announced that they are about to bomb because there are terrorists hiding under it. So it's really gutting. I mean, it's really, to hear that, I mean, people were just stunned at that. Not that they should have expected anything different. I mean, you go to a rally like this, I mean, that's par for the course, unfortunately. But that's just one example of just a super intense moment. But it was very well attended. I mean, it was a cold, nasty, wet night here. Monday, 5 o'clock, not good circumstances for a rally and a march. And they still had, I would guess, 300 to 400 people in a fairly small town. Wow. So, that's very significant. And, like I said, I have video of it. I'm going to cut together something for our show on Wednesday afternoon. But, yeah, I mean, it's important to get out there. I know, CJ, you were out at the LA march. Mm-hmm. I know Russell's been to some. And so, yeah, it's important to show your face at these things.
Yeah, and that's what this segment. So I'm happy perfectly that you made it before this segment was over, because this segment is about weekend pro-Palestinian protests, and I'll pass it to. I can't see you, but one of you, I think you want to chime in. Let me just show this video, and I'll show a couple of videos from the LA protest, the one that I went to, and here is the overview of what LA looked like this past massive. I mean, it had to have been at least, if I was just estimating, I mean, if it was under 20,000 people there, I would be very surprised that it was less than 20,000 people.
That's a pretty big crowd.
I know in Chicago it's been like a recent one's at 5,000, and this has been the fourth consecutive weekend. There was actually a recent conflict I believe somewhere on Michigan Avenue between I've seen them before, the Black Hebrew Israelites and the Palestinian protesters. There was a fight that happened between them, which was as stupid as hell.
With the Black Hebrews?
Yeah, yes. If you've been in Chicago, you should know what I'm talking about. Like, there's always the random.
But don't they consider them usurpers, the Israelis?
From what I remember seeing, because again, there's a lot of infamous, well-known people who panhandle and stand around corners in downtown area Chicago. You have the preacher who tells you how you're all going to go to hell, and then the Black Hebrew Israelites. I mean, the groups that I've seen would say that they're like the original,
right? Exactly.
Jews or Israel. I don't know too much about the story behind it, but yeah, and there was a conflict that happened, a fight on Saturday, which was dumb. Apparently, just heated opinions, and the CPD just sat there and just honked their horns to break the fight up. That's it.
Let me play another video here, gentlemen. This is probably maybe the one. If I might play one more, because this one kind of encompasses a lot of what it was like on the ground at the LA protests. That's a Free Palestine lowrider. When I saw that, I had to get that on camera. And I was walking up and down the line. This was more towards the back of the line. You'll see the depth when I pan over. You'll see the depth of how far ahead the crowd goes to. So let's watch more. You can see it there, and I'll stop it here, but you can see the depth there is just blocks and blocks of people. I wasn't even quite sure. When you're in it, you don't realize it's huge, but you don't realize exactly how big it is until you see some of the footage sometimes after it's over. And that was the case for this LA one. And try to make it out again. And like you said, you want to try to show your face is very important, and it's inspiring, and you meet people that's in the same sort of space. So I was the last member that hadn't. They all got a chance to go the first week that we protested, and then Sabby went the following week, and then I finally got a chance to go this past Saturday. So happy that is the case. But Keaton, I'll give you a word before we close this segment. And we were just talking about the worldwide protests and how the establishment, they really don't know what to do. Because it's like, it's not another country, it's us. They still need us for certain things like voting. They still need us to do things, so they can't really go too ham at us. You get what I'm saying? They got to really kind of with kid gloves. But I find that Fox News is the only one that really kind of touches upon this subject all the time. The other ones, because they know it's part of the Democratic coalition, they are kind of just staying completely away. CNN, MSNBC, they kind of don't talk about this particular part. They reference it.
How do they avoid
that?
How do you avoid it? It's constant.
It's amazing how they do it. But Keaton, you've been to a protest. You've seen the establishment reaction. It's amazing to me, Keaton. It almost feels like they had no idea that people were against the colonial project known as Israel. It's almost like they're surprised by so many people's views. But what say you, Keith? Go ahead.
No, that's 100% right. By the way, for those in the chat, who the reason I was late is because I just came from a protest in March, and there was actually a guy who, one of the last speakers at the event, made this exact point, that it's important that people converse with friends, with family members, but also that they use the internet, use social media, keep getting the word out because it's working. He came, because look, I mean, obviously you talk about disaster, you talk about genocide, you're talking about a world historic human, catastrophe. And it's very easy when you go to this event, you're just overwhelmed with sadness. I mean, yes, it is inspiring to be amongst people who are like-minded and to see that you're not alone, but obviously the context in which you're all gathered is just horrible. And in this particular event, there were quite a few people there who spoke very, very personally about ways that they themselves had suffered. But then there was this guy toward the end who said, look, I'm going to try and give us some good news, which is that we are getting the message out. And it's important to keep getting the message out, use the internet, use social media to get the message out, because he made this point that, the mainstream media has been caught off guard by this. I don't think they were expecting this. Biden's approval rating dropped 11 points within his own party in the past few days, basically. And so, that's what the real use of these protests are, We covered on our show, what was it, last night? God, seems like forever ago. But we covered on our show last night this article where there was this Hollywood filmmaker who spoke with anonymity to The Intercept, and he was kind of divided. Well, do I speak out and say what I know is right, or do I hold my tongue? Because if I speak out, I might forfeit my career for ultimately what, right? Because ultimately, is my speaking out going to save a single Palestinian life? And, of course, no one person's voice is going to save anybody's life, but collectively, we may save some lives if we can get this violence under control a day sooner. That's hundreds of lives saved, right? That's hundreds of families who are at least less shattered than they would be, although being that Gaza is a place with very large families, it's almost inconceivable that every family comes out of this completely intact. That's just the horror of this. But it's
kind of like a Holocaust.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You could say
absolutely.
It's a Holocaust.
You could say it's a Holocaust, 100%. But the other main point that he made there, and that I've made on the show, and that I will echo here, is that signaling to each other that we're not alone is important, because that builds morale, that builds solidarity. It gives us a reason to communicate the message further. And there's no question that the political establishment, the media, have been taken off guard by the overwhelming support for the people of Gaza in the face of this horrific event. They thought this was going to be like America 2002. And if you look at the Fox News coverage, it is. It's amazing how after Trump, after all this populism, after all the Fox News people talking about how, well, Trump is the anti-war candidate, which means Fox is now the anti-war network. It's amazing how they can just, like that, turn back the clock, and now it's 2002 all over again on Fox News. It's the same exact atmosphere. Anyone who has any criticisms of Israel is pro-terrorist, they're pro-Hamas, they're traitors, dissent should be crushed. Like, they are back to their Bush-era ways over on Fox News. And I don't watch much of this stuff anymore. Like, CJ, I'll take your word for it, because you say, on CNN and MSNBC, they're not talking about this much anymore. I don't watch this. I don't watch TV news anymore. But it makes sense, because, on Fox, they are able to just take that, hardcore, neocon Republican position. That's less of a pivot, I guess. But it's kind of surprising, because I was very curious how the media was going to react to this, and it seems like, if what you're saying is right, like CNN and MSNBC are just kind of treading lightly. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah,
like I said, I haven't watched much.
like they're not directly, they're just kind of referencing it as part of something else, but they're really trying to avoid it. They'll say stuff like what's happening in Israel, and then they'll talk about what Republicans, for example, there was a segment today talking about how the new speaker is going to be getting this money to Israel, and it was saying how they're all on board with the money to Israel, but they're not on board with the money to Ukraine. And then they said this opposite, and they said the money for Ukraine, Democrats are all on board, but the Republicans are not. And they just made a small reference when they was talking about that, and they said, yes, the Democrats are divided, as we saw this weekend, and that was it. It was no showing or what do you mean by that? It was just a reference like that, and that's largely what I've been seeing on MSNBC and CNN. Definitely not showing footage. Definitely not showing footage of them protesting. Definitely not doing that.
Wow.
Right, because Fox, they could use it to sort of attack it. Right?
Well, right. Well, yeah. I mean,
on MSNBC, they can't really attack it without alienating some of their viewers. I mean, I guess so. If the numbers are accurate, which apparently, Biden did lose 11 points within his own party. That just came out, a few days ago.
So apparently some cowbell leftists are anti-Zionists, at least apparently.
Do a follow-up interview with the cowbell guys.
There you didn't see the Ben Shapiro clip we were playing. It's their analysis of what's going on between the Democrats and these protesters is pretty much the same analysis we've had on our show. The difference is they think it's a bad thing, and we think it's a good thing. They're looking at that and saying, you've encouraged all this, and we're saying, oh, wow, it actually stuck. It actually penetrated. They're actually willing to really take a stand at a moment when it actually counts. Wow, never saw that coming. And for them, it's, you see, you encourage these kids with that decolonization stuff, and now look what you get. But their analysis is not wrong. It's just their conclusion that's leaves something to be desired.
All right, gentlemen. I think we can move on and close that one. Now, there's something new I want to do. I want to try this out, and I sent you guys kind of the agenda. I want to do a thing called our 2 cents in 1 minute, and it just means this is like a rapid fire. I just want to show there's about 5 texts, 5 different subjects, and then either play the video or read the text, and then we kind of just comment and then move on to the next one. And the reason there's a bunch of little subjects that either we've covered individually or maybe they're a few days old, so maybe we're not going to spend as much time. And that's why I put these first sort of quick categories that we're going to be discussing. And the first one is actually, I got to share it before because I don't remember what it is. Okay, let's give it a second. All right, so let's go here. The first one is Biden approval rating. And I'm starting out here because we're already talking about Israel, so this is not too big of a jump. And let me bring up this headline here. I believe all of us have covered this, but I do want us to get a clip cut on all of us talking about this together, and that is Biden's approval rating among Democrats has dropped 11 points in a month, and that month happened to coincide with this latest escalation in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And this is 11-point drop within the Democratic Party. And let me just read a snippet. A new Gallup poll shows a double-digit drop in President Joe Biden's job approval rating within his own party in the aftermath of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack in Israel. The poll was conducted between October 2nd and October 23rd, with Democrats giving Biden a score of 75% approval in his job performance, down 11% percentage points from 86 in September. Now, I'll move away from the article. Now, a president with a 37% approval rating within his own party has, in my opinion, no chance of winning the presidency.
37 is overall. He's a 75 within the party.
Gotcha. That's true. That's true. But even still,
75 is still
75%
extremely low. That's extremely low.
It's still extremely low. But let's go around the table. I'll go to Kid. I'll go to Russell, and then Keaton to round out. What say you about this? And do you believe this has directly to do with the Palestinian-Israel conflict? So I'll set that as the question that everybody answers. Let's start with Kid.
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing. War is not favoring this Democratic politician. As Americans are struggling economically, we hear from our own Treasury Secretary that America can afford two wars, but yet there's nothing being done to bail out the U.S. citizen, and more hopelessness and despair is hitting the populace. So, of course, his approval rating is going to drop because Biden is not being an effective leader, and all the while as chaos ensues, his inept leadership is showing, and there's no way anyone can hide it. We're asking for leadership, and Biden cannot deliver, even amongst his most diehard supporters. This is a weak president, and it should come as no surprise that approval rating keeps on dropping lower and lower across the political spectrum.
Boom! Look at that pro over there. Knows this is these are quick takes. That's how it's
Russell.
done.
That's a minute. That's a minute.
That's soundbite style, baby.
That's a minute.
You want it, you got it. Signed, sealed, delivered.
You know, it's often observed that a lot of things that happen under a president are out of a president's control, but you're in the end, the buck stops here. You're going to get blamed for it. Now, Biden's a shitty president, but he didn't bring the country to a place of where the wheels are coming off. It was already there when he became president. It's just the policies that he has had have been a continuation of the kinds of policies that got us to a place where the country is coming apart. So I think he's not entirely to blame, actually. I think he's partly to blame. I think he hasn't done anything to make it better, but he didn't create the state of the country. He inherited it. But at the end of the day, look, they're going to look at the president. They're going to see exploding mortgage rates. They're going to see inflation making it impossible to afford what they used to be able to afford in a country where a middle-class life was already evaporating. You got a generation that can't afford houses, that have very unstable careers. And I personally think, yes, having the Ukraine and then having this war, that's probably most of it. I don't think it hurts if you look at when this poll was taken. The stock market had a good summer, and then it just started to roll over in September, and October has been brutal. And we know a lot of the Democrat base is the 401k crowd. So I think it's not entirely the war. I think it's also market performance right now.
Awesome.
And that was my unprofessional lengthy take.
Oh no, I'm sorry. And not Kid.
I know we are clipping this separately, so I'll just say for the sake of the YouTube clip that I just came back from a Free Palestine rally, and I can tell you from being there, this Israel-Palestine issue is a killer for him with his base. It is an absolute killer. There were about 400 people at this rally. I guarantee you, not a single one of them is going to vote for him next year. Not one. I could swear on that. They were chanting, "Fuck Joe Biden." I mean, they are furious at him to the point where they are not going to be there for him. I can guarantee you that. And look, I don't pick on people for their personal health choices, but we are standing right near the river outside in 20-mile-an-hour winds, and a good 10% of the crowd had masks on. which means that's a Democrat crowd, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if they're chanting "fuck Joe Biden" through their mask, standing near a river,
Wow,
and
that is a sight.
that means he's not. That means he has hurt himself badly with the Democrat base, and so yeah, that's what explains this.
God damn.
Wow, the only thing worse than having that, I don't know, like kente cloth. I don't know what else they could have.
And kneeling.
I'm just trying to think something worse. But our
kente cloth patterned masks.
Like I said, I'm not saying it to pick on him. I'm just saying you could tell it's a Democrat crowd, right?
Right. I'll just read this to close. This is Max Blumenthal with the same topic. And he says, Joe Biden's approval rating amongst Democrats has dropped by 11 points since he gave the green light to Israel's rampage against Gaza and blocked a secession of ceasefire resolutions, bringing him to his lowest point yet. That is Max Blumenthal. That was a good, quick segment. Let's move to the next one. I call these X Reacts. And the next one we're going to do is John Fetterman. And the reason this one is a quick clip, because the clip is only 1 minute and the commentary is going to be pretty direct. But again, we'll start here with Max Blumenthal's commentary here before I play the clip. It says, Senator John Fetterman refuses to speak and appears to cue a staffer to assault journalists and anti-war activists after Kovalik respectively challenged the senator's rabid support for Israel's Blitzkrieg on, I think that's how you say it, on Gaza. Now let's listen. I mean, this guy is relentless, I must say, and I wonder if he has other videos where he's challenging elected officials in the way that he is right here. But let's listen to this exchange, and then we'll comment on the other side. We'll start the other way. We'll start with we'll start with Keaton, and then Russell, and then Kit. Hang on, let me make sure it's turned up as loud as it goes. Oh no, let me go up a little more. So I'm gonna blast your ears right now.
A humanitarian ceasefire. No, I'm with the team. If I can talk to you. No, I can talk to. I voted for him. I'm sorry, this is a democracy. It absolutely is. Yeah, but kind of, sort of. Why? 10,000 people in Gaza have been killed, half are children. The Pope's calling for a ceasefire. The UN has called for it. I'm just asking you. You're a good guy. I voted for you. I know you're a nice guy. This is important. You need to leave. Here, can I give you a phone?
God damn.
I'm gonna let it play. I'll let it play.
He just assaulted him.
What I don't understand about this, and then I'll pass it to Keaton. What I don't understand is the guy was talking perfectly fine throughout the entire video. So if he was okay the first 10 seconds of him talking, at what point was it not okay that he needed to be? You know what I'm saying? It's not like he got more aggressive at a point. It was just questioning, and that was it. I didn't understand why did he have a trigger point, or what was that? But let's go to Keaton, and then we'll go to Russell for comment on this obvious coward, John Fetterman.
Yeah, I mean, my reaction to this is very, very brief. I think it's very, very telling and very fitting that John Fetterman makes his bodyguard wear those Carhartt hoodies also. It's like the Carhartt Mafia over there with surrounding
I thought
John
that was
Fetterman.
a random person.
No, he makes his bodyguard staff dress like him, dress like the fake working class populist, that he is. He makes his bodyguards dress exactly like him, so you always know who's with Fetterman.
So buy one, get one free costume. Buy one, get one.
Yeah, and I also just want to put a fair use claim in for you guys in case they hit us with a copyright over that Beast of Burden Rolling Stones track. That was ambient music. Nothing we could do about it.
And but before that, we had "We Will Rock You."
I know.
Russell, what say you? Same deal on this video. Your reaction to, or did you have you identified what was the threshold that made it go from okay to let's push this guy out? Go ahead.
Well, you know, when Peter Boyle died, I said, God damn it, we're never going to get a Young Frankenstein sequel. But now I'm saying, hey, I mean, Fetterman could seamlessly slip into that. It's like Brendan Ruth and Christopher Reeve. Yeah, I suspect that Fetterman is not mentally competent. And that's why the urgency of making sure he's not put in a position where he has to respond to a question was so great. I think they just puppeteer him. I don't think he's fit for the job. Because if you look at him there, you can see like he doesn't seem to know what to say. He doesn't seem to be able to speak. I think they write his press releases, they write his tweets, they tell him how to vote. I think he's not fit for the job, you know, and it's not a slam on him. I think it's abusive what his wife and other people around him are doing. I think they're propping this guy who's severely brain damaged up in order to secure their positions.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Kit, go ahead, Kit.
Well, Fetterman is doing the also fantastic politician hand symbol of trying to listen and pay attention, even though he's not coherently there. And of course, the individual that is being harassed, he has to remind Fetterman's security guard, because if you look at the body language, Fetterman is saying to the security guard, like, hey, get this guy out of here. We're technically a democracy, even though we're not. We're a republic, but we're an oligarchy. So with that being said, we have to remember that Fetterman was hoisted up as a potential Bernie Sanders 2.0. A lot of progressives, Justice Democrat people and the like kept on promoting him like, oh, yeah, if we get Fetterman in office, things will be better because he's just on the ball with progressive issues and things will change. But no, he's not, because he's been vocal against any kind of ceasefire. And because he can't put together a coherent sentence, his security guard and handlers have to make sure that he is still presented as somewhat viable to the brain dead, vote blue, no matter who people that still have confidence in him. Case in point, I wonder when anyone's going to once again ask the question to Fetterman, hey, why'd you chase that black jogger with a shotgun?
Yeah.
I mean, look
about that. People forgot about that, huh?
Look at him. Does he seem like he's tuned into the moment and the question and the speaker? No, look.
He's not up for a conversation. There's no question about that.
Oh, by the way, someone in the chat says, how bad was Dr. Oz to lose to this guy?
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
Jeez, yeah, that's terrible. But you know who this guy, and this is just funny, the guy with the glasses, he looks like Peter Hotez to me. I thought that was Peter Hotez.
He does a little bit.
It does look a little bit like
for
Peter
a second. But, all right, so let's close that one. Let's move on to the next quick hitter here, gentlemen. Kind of like these little quick segments. I'm curious to see how they're going to turn out when we cut them. But let's go to the next one, which is a video, and it's the same sort of setup where we have a video, very short video that we'll listen and comment on. But let's first start with the caption by Glenn Greenwald, or the tweet by Glenn Greenwald, and let me read it now. It says, let me start this video. It says, there's always an attempt by partisans to claim that the two parties are so irreconcilably different. On a few issues they are, but on so many of the most consequential, they're identical. On Ukraine and Israel, Biden and Hilary agree 100% with Lindsey Graham and Nikki Haley. And Glenn Greenwald is referencing this video where Hillary Clinton is answering or either responding to a question or a comment about having a ceasefire to help to prevent all the deaths of kids. So this is what she's answering here.
People who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible. It would be such a gift to Hamas because they would spend whatever time there was a ceasefire in effect rebuilding their armaments, creating stronger positions to be able to fend off an eventual assault by the Israelis. People who
Now, Hillary Clinton is sort of known for this last year. How many times have all of us covered where she just kind of has a snippet like this, where she just kind of goes off the rails with her warmongering? And for a person like Bernie Sanders in his golden years to be afraid of getting the Ralph Nader treatment, the people on the warmongering side, they have no qualms with going to their graves being a very staunch warmonger, and that is Hillary Clinton. Let's start with Kit, and then we'll go to Keaton and then Russell. But what say you, Kit? What was your reaction about this this latest warmongering ghoul take from Hillary Clinton?
We should not be surprised by these takes from Hillary Clinton, as she has had a shield wall by corporate media and the Democratic establishment that has allowed her the privilege to talk this way and not get any kind of pushback from anyone across the political spectrum, including the various generations, because the corporate media and the political system made it acceptable for her to talk like this. Only now are we seeing people be very critical of her and call her out because, my goodness, how long has this been happening under decades under Democratic and, yes, Republican establishment rule? So people are upset by this, but Hillary Clinton is unapologetic because she has lived through the decades of saying this stuff, and no one's saying, my goodness, are you a bloodthirsty monster? And so, again, at the end of the day, I have to give a huge congratulations to the two heroic activists that I interviewed on my show that actually called her out, and then also to, I believe, Alex Rosen, who also just called her out for her husband's behavior with a guy first name Jeffrey, last name E, in regards to that. So, look, call out these politicians, but no one should be surprised because she has been protected for so long, and the media said it's acceptable to talk this way because a quote-unquote journalists would never call her out on it. Don't expect that from CNN or MSNBC.
Russell, go ahead, sir.
She's like Henry Kissinger, but an idiot. Like Henry Kissinger is evil, but he's smart. It's like she's trying to do a Kissinger impersonation, and she's just not astute enough to do it. A lot of Hillary stands during the dark days of 2016. Very often, and there's one thing I have to concede, they would say, well, Bernie can talk that way. He's a white man. A woman can't get away with that. There's some truth to that, because if you look at people who are not traditional, straight white men in politics, they will only let the worst of them get to this level. They'll never let anyone who's any good get to where she is. She got where she is because she's a horrible monster, right? She doesn't in any way challenge power. If you want to say Hillary Clinton, who she is a critique of the system that created her, yeah, probably. Doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't be listening to her about how to do an oil change, much less how to handle international geopolitics.
And
that's what I got, man.
Least, I think
everyone expects me to do 10 minutes.
No, it wasn't. I was just waiting for Keaton. Go ahead, Keaton.
Yeah, well, fun fact about her. Her nickname in college was the Iron Dome. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's what they used to call her.
What? No, I
Get out of here. Get out of here. Stop lying. You get out of here.
No, I mean, it is amazing. The thing that's amazing about her is just how consistently wrong she is. Like most politicians, as bad as they are, every once in a while they'll say something where like, all right, you're a piece of shit, but I'll give you credit for this one. Her, never. She's just reliably wrong every single time. Every time. Yeah. And, it's just always in service of the war. machine, and her supporters would very often fall back on the fact, well, she is a woman, she has to be pro-war, or else they're going to say she's weak. All right, well, I mean, what kind of idiotic logic is that? What you're basically saying is that we can't trust women in power because every woman who rises to power is going to feel obligated to be a warmonger, or else they're going to be perceived to be weak. So, I mean, it's
a terrible ludicrous argument to make if you want more women in office.
Right. If you want more representation for women in power, maybe don't lead with, well, they have to be warmongers or else they're going to be mocked out of the room. Well, that's a good reason why you should never elect a woman, right?
Right. Right. and hey, I mean, Barbara Lee puts the lie to that. You know, she took a very unpopular stand at a time when it was hard to take. She's still in Congress. Now they won't let her go any. They won't let her go any further than that. That much is true.
That's a whole different. That is a whole different point. It's a lie that because you're a woman you have to be a warmonger. That's just their excuse. But what I'm saying is their excuse doesn't even make sense on its own terms.
Right. Well, it's a terrible argument if you want women to be elected. Like, that's a terrible argument for any identity. I mean, I've heard that in other contexts. Well, they have to be this way. I heard people say that about Obama. Well, Obama has to be this way because he's a black president. I mean, do you really want to make that case?
Yeah.
Right on, gentlemen. All right, so let's get into our final quick little subject here, and that is one that I think all of us have covered this, and that is Jamal Bowman.
This is my favorite. This is great.
Yeah, Jamal Bowman pleads guilty to the fire alarm incident. And if you're unfamiliar, let me just catch you up. Breaking, the video of Jamal Bowman pulling the fire alarm to stop a vote has been released. In his initial statement, Bowman claimed that he was rushing to get to the vote and did it by accident. The video shows him removing the warning signs and not even attempting to open. This guy's a clown. Open the door. All right, let's play the quick video. It's only 16 seconds.
Like, this guy's literally like a character on Vice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, you're not slick. All right. Now.
I mean, you just have to put the Benny Hill music in there. And
Yeah. I swear I was just thinking that.
And there you go. And that is Jamal Bowman. Now, if you recall, this is the statement he pulled out, I believe, when it initially happened. Statement from Jamal Bowman. I want to personally clear up confusion surrounding today's event. Today, I was sorry, it gets a little small. I was rushing to make a vote. I came to a door that is usually open for votes, but today would not open. I am embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it was open the door. I regret this and sincerely apologize for any confusion this caused. You know what I think? First thing I think of, gentlemen, and I'll let anybody who wants to chime in, is that if he didn't get caught with video evidence, wouldn't he still be going with this first lie? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, what other lies are all of these people just going with because they're just not caught? Is the question that I would have. Let's start with. Go ahead. Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to jump in because when we covered this on our show, I didn't know that this video existed, and the New York Times put out a report on this, and the New York Times, the way they wrote the article, sounded like he was telling the truth, that he thought that pulling the alarm would open the door and that he was trying to get out the door. It's only when you watch the video do you realize how that whole framing is completely wrong. Right? He was not struggling to open the door. It didn't even look like he tried to open the door. It looked like he just took the signs off the door. And even if he was trying to get out the door, if he thought the fire alarm would open the door, then wouldn't he try to open the door after pulling the fire alarm? He doesn't. He pulls the fire alarm and just walks away casually. So, but the way the print media described it made it sound like he was telling the truth. And I must admit, and I was wrong about this, I always thought he might have been telling the truth, because if there's one guy in Congress so buffoonish as to actually think that pulling the alarm might open the door, it would be him. If there's anybody in Congress who would make a stupid mistake like that, it's him.
No, my money's on Fetterman to make that kind of mistake, not Bowman.
Well, Fetterman would have an excuse. Fetterman would have a medical excuse. I'm talking about someone who's just like that much of a buffoon that they would do that.
The greatness of American politics, playing DraftKings with our politicians. That is just great. That is just great, gentlemen. Go ahead, Russell. Whoever else wants to chime in before we close this one.
My takeaway from that, as somebody who did a little crime in my misspent youth, the one good thing you could say about that is this guy didn't do no crime, man, because nobody who did crime would go about it that way. Mm-hmm. You gotta be an idiot. One of the first things I learned is just because you don't see a camera doesn't mean there's no camera.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Just because you don't hear an alarm doesn't mean no alarm is going off somewhere.
Precisely. Thank you for that. I don't know, Russell, you have any more? Because I just got
that's my hot take.
So first of all,
that's my hot take. Bowman never did street crime.
I knew that this story was a lie, and his excuse was a lie, because how is it that you are a high school principal in the great city of New York City and not know the difference between a fire alarm and an automatic door opener? Number two, Jamal Bowman, if you're going to lie, at least be bold enough to be like, I wanted to test Congress to see how they do a fire drill, so I decided to surprise it with a fire drill, just like Mr. Burns did at his radioactive plant. And apparently Congress failed miserably, and Bowman can't even tell. This is how you know. George Santos is by far a better liar than freaking Jamal Bowman. I mean, at least Santos tries to put together lie after lie. Bowman's lie is just weak. It's like low-level tier kind of lying. Do better. I expect more from my politicians. If you're going to lie to me, put a coherent freaking story together. Say, yeah, I want to surprise Congress with a fire drill. I'm the unofficial fire marshal of Congress. Something like that, man.
I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Like, to me, the story was the New York Times article and the way it was reported generally. Mm-hmm. Like, how can anyone credulously repeat the story he's telling with that video out there?
The New York Times made it sound like his story checked out.
Right.
Well, wait, gentlemen. Ashura in the live stream chat says, Kyle Kulinski, Dime Store M&M, defended Bowman, saying he believed believed him doing mental gymnastics on science-based reading. So yeah, because Kyle defended him,
After the video came out?
No, this is before, I think.
No. Before, like when the first video, just the snapshot of him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I mean? Where you couldn't tell what he did. He was able to come up with that story as long as it was only the snapshot. But watch as he's being chased after pleading guilty, and he just wants us all to forget all of this that happened. But he's lucky to be getting off with just this.
Any, official government proceedings. So I'm glad, the investigation found that was the case. The misdemeanor charge of pulling the alarm,
not true.
I admitted that from the very beginning. So, gotta take responsibility.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. The court.
Go ahead.
The court, the division, I think it's the Capitol Police, they're not empowered to delve into the question of whether he was trying to disrupt an official proceeding. So what he's saying there, and he said it in the clip we showed too, which was a different clip, I think the next day, that their investigation showed he's lying. He's lying. They specifically said it's not within their power to render a judgment on that. That's a federal matter. That would have to go to the Attorney General.
All right, here's another short clip, and then we'll close this one.
Congressman Jamal Bowman turning himself in moments ago. Fox News cameras capturing this exclusive video of the squad member surrendering. The lawmaker from New York is expected to plead guilty after being charged with falsely pulling the fire alarm at a congressional office building. It happened just before the House voted on a stopgap spending bill to fund the government. Last month, Bowman is set to be arraigned at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time.
All right, gentlemen.
Congressman Jamal Bowman turning
any final
himself.
words on this Bowman? This is just classic Bowman. This is not the last time we're gonna hear any ridiculousness from this guy. He's just
Clown
a
behavior.
bumbling idiot. But go ahead. Any final words? Go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, shout out to Roger Meadows who actually put this guy on point. And what did Jamal Bowman do when Roger Meadows was calling him out for his hypocrisy? There's a video I played way back in 2022, I believe. And Bowman says, like, hey, man, why do you got to come up to me asking me all these tough questions?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, get out of here, Jamal. You're a politician. You're supposed to be giving tough questions. Now answer them, goddammit.
Right on. Anyone else? Final words before we move on to Bernie versus Abby Martin.
Oh, wow.
Shoot.
I'm good.
Now-
I don't have anything more.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
good.
I'm going to start with this segment, but I do want to ask you, Keaton, because I know was involved in a lot of what happened with Peter Daou. You think
Mhm.
it's possible for you to kind of take the lead when we do that segment? Because I don't know the chronological order. So whenever you're ready
Sure.
to share, once you get everything shared, I'll give you access to where you can share whatever. But I just,
Oh,
'cause
you
I
mean
have
you
a
want,
bunch
you want
of
me to do
tweets.
you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, not now, but when we get to that segment, yeah, like so I would assume you know kind of the order of the tweets, like because I saw him.
What?
tweeting
Jimmy
Lee
jumped
Dissident.
into that. Jimmy jumped into that thread.
Oh, yeah, he did, yeah.
All right.
But it
All
started with you guys, right? Didn't it start
Yeah, it
with
started
Lee
with me.
Dissident?
Yeah, it started with me.
Yeah.
Also
Okay.
going after a little bit JB too, because Peter Daou and his.
Well, it started with
sycophant-
Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll get it already.
Yeah. All right, it's after this segment. So I'll do the Abby segment, and then we'll do the Peter versus Jimmy segment for those that are waiting. Now we're getting into our main event stories. I wanted to save those to the end, probably because they're going to be a little longer. But we're going to get into Abby Martin versus Bernie, and we're going to combine it with just Abby Martin receipts because she's been putting out a lot of good footage. I just think it would be good to kind of revisit if you haven't seen it before. And then we'll get to the main event, Peter Daou. I feel like it's the main event. Peter Daou versus Due Dissidents versus Heartlands Media versus Jimmy
RBN.
Dore. And Peter Daou, I don't know if you saw it, but Peter Daou had a Robin to his Batman, and that was the Vanguard chimed in too. I don't know if you saw
I didn't see that.
See that? I'll
I
bring
didn't
it
see.
up.
Okay.
I'll bring it up when we get to that part, Keaton. All right. So let's get to this first part of this next segment here, and that is this tweet from Abby Martin. And let me make sure I put up the right caption here before I get started for Aaron. And Aaron's our editor, so shout out to Aaron. She's the one that makes all the great videos that we have. Here is the banner, and Aaron, you can start the clip right here. So Abby Martin calls out Bernie Sanders, and she also gives us a lot of receipts on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And let's start here with this tweet here. She says, actually, let me start with the Bernie tweet, and then we'll know what she's calling him out for. The Bernie tweet says, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. Getting worse by the minute. Israel must obey international law and allow innocent men, women, and children the food, water, medical supplies, and fuels that is desperately needed now.
And all I need is $27 from you to get that food and water through to the Gazan children today.
Now, Abby Martin, who quite is familiar with Bernie Sanders, she knows his politics, but this is her response. how many dead children need to be pulled out of the rubble for Bernie Sanders to support a ceasefire? And the reason she's saying this is the reason that all of us have covered this. Bernie Sanders voting for a resolution to continue, absolutely ignoring a call from his own staffers to call from a ceasefire. But
About
you
300
see,
people.
yeah, but you see Abby Martin chiming in here. What said all of you? Kind of give us a short snippet of what did you say in your own individual videos about Bernie Sanders' lack of ability to participate in calling for a ceasefire. I'll start with Keaton, and then we can go to Russell, and then Kit. But what was your reaction about the whole ceasefire thing with Bernie Sanders and how his ex-staffers were asking him to sign up for that?
You know, we were thinking about doing a segment on that, and we decided not to. We've mentioned
Oh.
Bernie a few times, but only in passing because, unfortunately, I just don't really expect much different from him at this point.
That's it, yeah.
And, you know, looking back on our involvement in the Bernie campaigns, this was always a blind spot of his. I mean, foreign policy in general was always a blind spot of his, but we always thought he was particularly mealy-mouthed and weak on this specific issue. And he remains to be. I mean, all of this, whether it's Bernie or any of these people, whatever they say is in service of a narrative that this war started on October 7th. That's really what it is. Because they're all, you would think, from listening to Bernie Sanders in this case, that, you know, a humanitarian truce, as he put it, will give things a chance to reset. Well, that begs the question, reset to what, right? Reset to what? And this calls into question people's understanding and Bernie's acknowledgement or lack of acknowledgement of the reality in Gaza before October 7th, which was constant police brutality, surveillance, control of imports, control of agriculture, policing of movement, and yes, the occasional air raid, right? I mean, what's happening now is just a more exaggerated version of what's been happening in Gaza for years and years. And so all of these words just ring so hollow because all of this assumes a certain status quo that is stable and, if not acceptable, at least tolerable. And it's not. It's not. This is a concentration camp that's now a death camp, right? And so there's just not a recognition of the stakes here. And it's shameful that a guy like Bernie, who I have to believe knows what's going on, is not more vocal in his opposition to this, but it's really not surprising. And so to the extent we've mentioned him, and we have mentioned him, we've only done so in passing because unfortunately, it's just not news to me that he is saying exactly what he's saying.
What?
Yeah, but Bernie is like your ex that turned out not to be who you thought they were. And then people want to come up and be like, "Yay, did you hear what he said?" And you're like, I don't care. Don't tell me. I mean, I'm not interested. I put that behind me, man. That's it. Like, I don't care what he says. Who gives a fuck? He's a pathetic excuse for a radical or revolutionary. Calls himself a socialist, and you know what? This is what's most embarrassing, I think, for anyone who was on the Sanders train. Everything the Washington Insider said about him, calling us naive, they were all right. They were all proven right. They all said, what drives us crazy about Bernie is he's just a politician. He does politics like anybody else. He does the same deals. He does the same compromises as anybody else. And he's presenting himself as this radical revolutionary. It's a branding exercise. It's not who he is. That was all proven right. Like, at this point, I just don't understand why he keeps talking. Like, shut the fuck up, man. You made your money. You got your house. You sold your book. Shut the fuck up now. You know your people moved on. You can see the $27 aren't coming in anymore. Go away. Go away. Shut up, man. Like, why are you pretending to have some kind of moral authority? Why are you pretending anyone cares what you say? When Bernie goes to speak now, who shows up? It looks like a Hillary Clinton rally.
Precisely.
It does. It's true.
Precisely.
You ever see those videos? Nobody shows up to hear him talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Same with AOC, man. If Jose Vega didn't come, nobody would go.
She needs Jose. She has to pay Jose under the table. Like, hey, please come to my event. You really spice things up.
She need. I mean, I'm spilling the beans here. She reaches out to the LaRouche people every time she speaks to paper the house.
I think Kit's up next. Kit, is it Kit that's next?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kit.
yeah. So here's my thoughts on it. It's not about Bernie Sanders. It was more to those 300 people who wrote that letter to Bernie. They are like your friend who still believes in their ex and thinking that they could still win them over. And it's like, dude, she's cheating on you. You're just another dude on the roster, or you were that fall-on person. Bernie Sanders never respected you. Bernie Sanders didn't stand up for his volunteers in 2016. I was there in Philly. I saw what happened to his delegates and volunteers. He didn't stick his neck out for them. He let them get abused and harassed. He let them get pushed around. He let them get constantly threatened and have their livelihoods at risk. He didn't fight for them. So if he didn't fight for them in 2016, if he didn't fight for us in 2020, what the hell makes you think that 300 of his former staffers are going to make an impact on him? Perhaps the one thing Bernie Sanders will probably say in response to all those 300 people, who's paying you? Is it Putin? I don't know. Russell, you could do a better Bernie Sanders impression, but that's the thing. So those 300 people, bless your heart. You probably are good, wonderful people, and we probably agree on a lot of political issues, but get over Bernie Sanders. Your ex moved on, and they never liked you. They didn't think about you. They didn't respect you. Bernie fits that profile, and those 300 people are just naive. I was like, oh, yeah. That's how I was looking at it, naive people.
All right, let me play, and let's listen to Scott Ritter on Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders has never been against war. Bernie Sanders is not a member of the anti-war coalition. Bernie Sanders is a walking, talking hypocrite. Bernie Sanders is only against war when it's to his political benefit. He's against the wars of the Republican Party. He's against the wars that the Republicans got us into. He was against the war in Iraq, the occupation of Syria, etc. But was he against the occupation of Syria? It'd be interesting to find out Bernie Sanders' voting record when it came to supporting the Syrian opposition to Bashar al-Assad. I think you'll find that he was for that war. See, Bernie Sanders is a warmonger. The Democratic Party is a warmongering party. They exist, they pray for war. They believe that wars can be good as long as the wars don't politically benefit their political opponents. So if it's a Republican war, Bernie will pretend to be anti-war, but his true colors have been exposed. And everybody, when they say Bernie Sanders' name, spit, because that's what he deserves. He doesn't deserve any respect. He's a disgusting Zionist. He supports Israel without any, there's no limit to his support. If you're not screaming from the top of your lungs in protest for the slaughter of the Palestinian people today, then you are a Zionist. If you are not demanding the termination of this conflict, if you are not saying not one more dollar to Israel, no more weapons to Israel, then you are a warmongering Zionist. You are the worst kind of person.
Man, Scott Ritter could not have said it better myself. That was Scott Ritter. I do, unless one of you wanted to chime in, I can't see you, so if you want to chime in and speak up, but I do want to just kind of go to a couple of other good receipts that I saw from Abby Martin, and then just to kind of play it, and then we'll get a reaction on the other side, and a couple of tweets that she has here. First being this one here. It says the media won't tell you Gaza is a warehouse of millions of ethnically cleansed Palestinian refugees that live trapped under a brutal Israeli blockade. Here's the forbidden historical context. And I just want to show a little bit of this. Of course, we're not going to show all of it, but just to shout out and support her. It's about a 10-minute video. I'll play a couple of minutes of it.
Gaza has a story. If you look at mass media, the story you find is that they fire hundreds of rockets into Israeli cities right across the border. Everything before that point is left out. Most commonly, we hear of rockets hitting the border city of Sderot. It is home to the notorious Sderot cinema, where settlers drink beer and eat popcorn watching bombs fall onto Gaza. Sderot was one.
That is disgusting.
Yep.
That is disgusting. I did not know that until I watched this a couple of times. That is disgusting. It's akin to what's going on now, because I've seen that there's some Israeli settlers making TikTok videos about Palestinians right now. Just like if you have a plan to do this disgusting thing, like it's like, why aren't you trying to at least package it as being nice? And it seems like they don't care to a certain extent. Like everybody is supposed to be on board with this Zionism and killing Palestinians.
Well,
it's just normal to them. But go ahead.
Well, it's really interesting having been exposed to this equation of, from the inside, from childhood, of anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And that's really all they've got. I mean, that's all they can really hide behind. I mean, how do you justify the images coming out of Gaza when we're able to get images? How do you justify killing thousands of children? You've got to invoke this great moral outrage, right? You have to push these buttons, and it's worked. It's worked for 75 years, and it stopped working, and they don't know what to do. And because they don't know what to do, they're just cranking up the volume on that hysteria. The one of the early protests right after this happened that I went to in Times Square, we showed
that was the next day. That was October 8th.
That was the next day. What was it? I didn't realize.
Yeah, it was the day after.
Yeah. That was what they wanted to keep screaming. The counter protesters. This is genocide. They're claiming that this is genocide. What's being done to them is genocide. I swear to you, I've got it in the. If you go back and you watch the segment we did, yeah, I've got someone screaming from the Zionist side. That's called genocide. That's called genocide. You hate Jews. You hate Jews. And they are desperate to deflect to that. They are desperate to define it that way. And you're seeing it at the highest levels. Look at Joe Biden announcing today that they're going to get involved in speech on college campuses they're trying to define it as a wave of anti-Semitism by definition. Now, look, I'm not going to say that no asshole shows up at any of these protests and says something anti-Semitic, but I didn't hear anything like that. I heard a lot of racist stuff on the other side of the street, and I showed it, and it's in that clip that we aired. I didn't hear that from the other side. I'm not saying it never happens, but they pray for that to happen. And when it does happen, they blow it up as if that is at the core of the entire movement. It's such desperate, transparent propaganda. They were doing a protest this Saturday, and when I looked it up, there was all this stuff online. Yeah, Jews need to not be in that area on that day. It's dangerous for them. Really? Really? Because I didn't hear any incidents of any Jews being assaulted at that protest.
Well, no, because
if anything like that had happened, they would love to. Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Most activists know not to do that because they know that the media wants them to do that, right? Most people who organize understand what the pitfalls are and where the bear traps are. So they are not about any of that shit, right? The event that I was at, you had Jewish Voices for Peace was one of the main sponsors of the event. Multiple people got up and said Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. Thunderous applause from the audience, right? So, like, the activists are not about that, partly because they are, in this case, sincerely not about that, right? I mean, if you are pro-Palestine, you are pro-humanity, and pro-humanity means you don't harbor, generally speaking, bigoted beliefs, right? But also, you know, these people who organize these things when they go out there, that's not their first rodeo. They know what the media wants
Right.
them to say.
Right.
They
Yep.
know the pitfalls. They're very
Yep.
careful not to do that. That's why you hardly ever see it.
And I'm just going to point out one more thing, because aside from the claims of anti-Semitism, and we talked about this a little bit on the last post-duopoly show, they keep invoking what strikes me increasingly as your classic savage Indian trope, you know, these tales of rape and child murder. Now, I can't say by definition that hasn't happened, but honestly, the more I look into it, the more skeptical I am. Because I've had Zionists come at me painting these very lurid pictures that are right out of a 19th century book about the savage Indians. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. I had somebody write to me about, well, you have to strike back when people are raping a woman while burning her baby in an oven and laughing. And I said, can you show me evidence that this happened? Can you show me any evidence of this? None was forthcoming. And so increasingly I'm saying, because these people are highly motivated to present that kind of evidence if it exists. And if it existed, they'd be on it, right? So where is it? More than one person making this claim, I've said, really, I want to know. Can you show me evidence that this is happening? Nothing. So increasingly, I think it's your classic colonizer method. You know, in order to justify brutality, you claim that to have been the victim of brutality, or more to the point, that the people that you're doing this to are such a danger and a threat, or so beyond the boundaries of any kind of civilized normative behavior that they have to be wiped out for the safety of the community.
Facts. Let me finish the video, or not finish, finish 2 minutes of the video that I wanted to play. And we're going to start where the settlers are watching bombs fall on Gaza.
Wrote cinema, where settlers drink beer and eat popcorn watching bombs fall onto Gaza.
Yeah.
Sderot was once called Hajj, a village that was 100% Palestinian and Muslim. Israeli historian Benny Morris uncovered that not only did Palestinian residents get along well with Jewish settlers, but they actually hid and protected them from British occupation forces in 1946. When a British army dragnet was rounding up members of a Jewish paramilitary, the Palestinians of Hajj kept them safe. It came as a shock to them when just about a year later, that same paramilitary violently expelled every single resident of Hajj. All fled to Gaza. Hajj was renamed Sderot, and settlers from all over the world started to move there. This is the family history of almost every current resident of Gaza, where roughly 75% of people living there are refugees from villages just outside of their border. They were among the 500 Arab villages completely depopulated at the barrel of a gun in 1948, in what became known as the Nakba. Those who wouldn't leave their homes were killed. That year, the United Nations issued Resolution 194, which mandated that all of the 750,000 Palestinians made refugees from the Nakba had the right to return to the land they were ethnically cleansed from. From that day forward, Israel has refused, in flagrant violation of international law. Displacement.
I'm going to pause it there because not playing all of it is not going to do it justice. So I don't want to get too far into it. The reason I wanted to play some of it, I got another video I wanted to play, is because she has a pretty good library on this topic, along with Dan Cohen. So these are two sort of sources on this topic that anybody who's not well versed on just what's happening, like if you're just coming into this understanding of this conflict through the lens of what recently happened, leaning on Abby Martin and leaning on Dan Cohen to catch you up as far as information are both pretty good sources of information. Now, this video right here is when she was in, I believe it's Palestine, in Israel with Dan Cohen. So this is the other reporter I was telling you about, but they did this together. So let's watch this.
We're here in Zion Square in Jerusalem, which the government has actually declared to rename Tolerant Square. And we're just going to ask everyday Israelis what they think about the situation. You're American. Where are you from and why did you come here?
I'm from New York, and I came here with my family when I was younger to make Aliyah, because it was always my parents' dream to come to Israel because we're religious.
So, are you American?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Why? When did you move here and why?
I moved here 11 years ago. My family moved here because this is the country of the Jewish people and the future of the Jewish people, and we want to be here.
How old are you guys?
18.
We're 18 years old. Now we are here in Israel taking a leadership course, and we're going to the army for a few months to see how life's here. And then we hope to bring back some of this knowledge to our youth movements.
So you're like an internship with the army?
It's about 2 months, and they show you everything about the army.
Israel is a great place. It's a nice place. You should come and visit. I love Israel, and I feel safe here.
All that misconceptions are not true. Like, there's not people with knives every day, and there's not people exploding.
Palestinians?
Yeah. No, but pretty much the life here is really good.
For people living here, it's just normal to see people in the army walking around with guns, and you feel completely safe and protected.
I feel like we know who the threat is, and it's not coming from anyone random, as opposed to in the rest of the world that could be anyone. Here we know who our enemy is, and we know that they are out to get us.
Who is the enemy?
Who's the enemy? That's a very good question. I don't think it's specifically any nation. I think it's the people that are so interested in being politically correct that they won't actually go after the people that are trying to cover things up.
I have no idea what she meant by that.
That's an AOC word salad.
Well,
Yeah,
she just
it's-
she wasn't expecting to be challenged, and so once she was challenged, she's like, "Oh, I can't say the Palestinians are the enemy. I have to come up with a more politically correct thing than that."
Basically, I mean, my read, just knowing Zionists and how they think and how they formulate, how they see the world, it was a roundabout way of saying that the woke people buy the propaganda coming out of the Arab world about how they're oppressing those people, but they don't understand who those people really are.
Right, but that doesn't answer Abby Martin's question, because
Oh,
Abby
cool.
Martin wasn't saying who's your political enemy. She's like, who are the people who are out to kill you, right?
Yeah. Well,
You know.
she ducked it.
Yeah, she ducked it.
Ducked and dodged.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I again, this was more of a Abby Martin appreciation segment, just to kind of shout out some of the work she does, and make sure you go check out, because I'm interested in just learning more, so that we can combat some of these Zionist talking points. I want to get better at this, basically, is what I'm saying, like a Max Blumenthal in that interview with Tim Pool. So anybody who's looking to gain more information, more knowledge on this conflict, Dan Cohen and Abby Martin are some good sources. Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead if you had any final...
I'm actually right now, this is as a high school dropout and an autodidact. From the time I dropped out of high school, the way I'll study a subject is I'll get a very general book on it, and I'll start there, and then I'll get more specific. So right now, I am educating myself, and I'm starting with a general history of the Middle East. I've always taken an interest in Roman history, Greek history. I've never really delved into that history. And it definitely flips things a little bit. And this is not like a very biased activist kind of history. That's not what I was looking for. I was looking for something very neutral. But, very often you'll see people in the West who are anti-Muslim or Islamophobic will talk about how Jews and Christians were treated in the historic Arab world, and I mean, I kind of knew this, but this is getting into this. They were treated a hell of a lot better than Muslims were in the Christian world, and certainly better than Jews were in the Christian world, because under Islam, they see them as people of the book, right? Jews, Christians, it's within the same religious tradition and lineage. So under the Ottomans, under the Mamluk empires, under the Persians, they were allowed to live within their territories. Sometimes they were allowed to take on government roles. In some, they were not. But no, if you look at the medieval period in Europe, how Jews were treated, they were treated a lot better in Muslim countries in that era than they were in the Christian world. So, as with so many things, a lot of what you're told, a lot of the framing of history that you get is exactly the reverse of what actually happened, because we're in the West. That's the perspective that we get.
Spot on. I'll read some super chats and then I'll bring it to you, or pass it to you, Keaton.
All right, I'm on deck. I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. So let me read these super chats. We got a couple, 7. All right. This first one says, RBN, my daily dose of realness. Great panel. Oh, my bad. I thought I had it on the screen. My computer is a little bit slower than everybody else's. All right, now I got it on the screen. So what I was reading is this: RBN, my daily dose of realness, great panel. And that is from Putz the Mouse. I think that's right. Mm-hmm. Then we have Abiding71 with a super sticker. Thank you for that. Always showing love to all of the content creators on the left. And now the next one, this one is from Bennett Weiss. Thank you for this super chat. Why weren't this many on the streets protesting funding for Ukraine? That is a good question. And I would say, trying to answer this, and if anybody else wanted to chime in, and the question is, why weren't this many people out on the streets protesting against the funding of Ukraine? And my only thing I can think of is that because the Palestinian issue has been going on for decades, and because we have family that's living here. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I believe the number one reason, it's been going on for a long time, and just more people have been invested because of that. Anyone else want to chime in?
Ukraine didn't cause cognitive dissonance.
That too.
That's it. Because this is what's so shocking to them. Because the people normally, all they have to do is put out the word of what liberal elite opinion on a subject is, and that's what they do. And now the cognitive dissonance between what they've been told about how they should see colonizers and abuse of brown people is just too much in conflict with what they're telling them to get on board with. And you're seeing Keaton put together a great video of the Grand Central protest where you could almost see one of these protesters getting woke, for real woke, as she's being interviewed. You could see her say, the Democratic Party, they're no better. You can see her realizing it as she's saying it. So
great. Welcome on it all.
Welcome. Exactly. Ukraine didn't push those buttons because it's white on white.
This next one is fracking Fetterman was gifted that election, or was given that election, I guess, and that is from a brand. It bought a 4-month membership. Is that Axel?
Yeah, that's our old
Axel
friend.
Strife.
Axel Strife.
Oh, what's up? All right, so
Lafayette, Louisiana.
Next one. Let's read. It's only 3 more, so let's read all of them right now. This one right here says. This one is from. Let's do Sam's first. All right, this one's from Sam. It says, Ryan Grimm's next book is about the need to simply fire alarm labels nationally in order to fight the plight of mass confusion among squad members. Did I miss a word there? Ryan Grimm's next book is about the need to
Simplify.
simply,
Yes, or I
maybe
think
it's
he's looking for
simplify.
simplify.
Yeah, simplify fire alarm labels
Fire alarm, I
nationally
can read- I can
in
read going.
order
I
to
can
fight the plight of mass confusion among squad members. And that's a good tweet. That's a good super chat. I just messed it up. Thank you, Sam, for that. And then the next one, this one is Will S. I'm assuming that's not Will Smith.
Will Smith is a secret fan of RBN.
Maybe. I did call out Jada. I did call out Jada for him, but here it says.
Oh man, she's doing him wrong too, man.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, he could have given you more than $2 for that if that's the real Will Smith.
Ethnic cleansing is Netanyahu's nocturnal emission. And I know I'm messing up some of these super chats. My computer's delayed. And the next super chat is from Daou. I think that's how you say the name. Let's give it a second to pop up on screen here. And this one goes by Russ on ID Pal.
On identity politics.
I'll let you read that one. Go ahead if you want to.
A bit unfair. Wasn't a bunch of dupes. Movements get co-opted. We don't see this re-Palestine without BLM race gen struggle, not antagonism to the class war. I'm sorry, man. That's like the magnets.
That's
that's like the poetry magnets where you just move them around and get different things.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought you would better understand.
I got the first part, and then I lost it on.
No, what I think what their point is that you wouldn't see this pro-Palestine uprising were it not for the BLM movements and those things like that. And I think there is some truth to that because a lot of Black Lives Matter organizers are out there. Yeah.
No. I mean, a lot of what we've said. See, people always hone in on one part of what you say. Earlier on in this very podcast, I said I'm eating a lot of my words on a lot of this stuff that I've been very skeptical on because now something real came up, and hey, man, they're out there. You got to adjust your views to the facts on the ground. So no, I fully agree with you that these movements, now that something really significant is happening, have led to an incredible outpouring of support for the Palestinians for these kids at elite schools. I mean, all right, those are high quality problems to have, I'll grant you, but they are risking their careers and their futures in order to take this stand. So yeah, absolutely.
Here's the last one. This one's from ARJ 1997, $10 super chat. That is an ultimate betrayal of the Palestinians at the hands of Israeli Jews to go ahead with the Nakba after the Palestinians protected you from British forces just a few years earlier. Yeah, that is pretty double crossing of them to do that. Now I'll pass to you, Keaton, and if you want to share, I'll put your
I think I have it. I think I have the ability to do that, right?
Oh,
or no?
Yes, you do. You should be able to share, and then it'll come to me, and then okay, here it goes right here. I'll go ahead and
toss to you.
There you go, sir.
Boom! Look at that. I pass to you. You put it in the basket. Beautiful. Okay, so we all pretty much know the backstory on this, right? Peter Daou quit the Cornel West campaign for quote-unquote health reasons. He then announced later that day that the health reasons were that he was having PTSD from his childhood in war-torn Beirut, and the news was getting to him, and so he needed to take a mental health.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that was. I didn't know the reason of the sickness that came out. So
okay,
so say that again. Say so. Tell me.
That's fine. Yeah. So the reason, so his health reasons that he cited were mental health reasons.
He had a goiter.
Yeah, that was mental health reasons. So basically, he was citing PTSD because he grew up as a child of war, and so he said that the news was really getting to him, and so he had to withdraw from the campaign for those reasons. And I tweeted out separately. He didn't respond to this one. I said, look, I don't want to be an asshole. Like, I'm not going to minimize that. Obviously, I take that very seriously. Mental health is a real thing. But if this is a revolutionary campaign, as it's supposed to be, and you're leading it, doesn't that mean you fight through trauma, fight through hardship? Like, the whole point is we have to fight. We have to fight in the face of horror, not retreat to do self-care in the face of horror. Like, if you're retreating because this is too tough on you, then you probably shouldn't have been there in the first place, which was what all of us were saying, right? So that was that. Okay, so here's the thing, though. He steps back for self-care, right, because he has PTSD and he needs a mental health break. Within hours of resigning for mental health reasons, he was on Twitter doing what he's done always, which is trolling and pissing people off and snapping back at critics and starting fights. Pardon me. And so, we all gave our takes on, him leaving the campaign. Russ and I gave ours. I'm sure, Hardlands RBN did yours.
Oh, we did.
So JB gave his on his channel, Exit Stage right? Now, Peter Daou chooses to quote tweet that link and writes, "Curious, does my rejection of money from Nazi collector billionaires make my exit stage right or stage left?
Wow.
And what about my taking the campaign from net negative cash and 4% in the polls to 100K cash on hand and 9% in the polls? What nefarious motives are those, LOL?" All right, so then I just replied, and I really just did this. I figured I would stick up for JB a bit. I said...
And not to step on the segment, but, I mean, that's a pretty vicious attack on Cornel there.
Right, he's saying Cornel wanted to take Nazi money,
right.
You know what I mean?
What?
And couldn't keep his finances straight, right? So, look, I mean, I just chimed in. I figured I would stick up for JB a little bit because I just said, look, I thought you quit because you needed time to pray, because that's what he said. I need time to pray. I thought you quit because you needed time to pray, not to bitch at left-wing commentators who rightly predicted that Cornel's campaign would nosedive as soon as you got involved. Like, if you're quitting for mental health reasons, I respect that. I think it's indicative of the fact that you should have never been given the job in the first place, which is what we all said in the first place. But, like, whatever. If you're going to quit for mental health reasons, then why are you online hours later picking fights with people? Like, if you need a mental health break, this doesn't seem like much of a mental health break.
Right.
So that was my point there. Now, Jimmy retweeted that. And that's how he got involved in this. So, well, actually, that's not exactly how he got involved in this. I'm sorry. I went a little bit out of order. First, Peter took what he perceived as my bait, I guess. I guess I baited him into a beef. Your left wing in the sense, so this is Peter quote tweeting me. Your left wing in the sense of denying that a prominent black scholar makes his own decisions about his campaign while minimizing my PTSD. Fact, his campaign was in debt when I joined and had $100,000 cash when I left, and his highest poll numbers were under my watch, so get the fuck out. So then I snapped back because he implied that I was denying a black man agency, when of course I was not. And so I just said, so you're saying he needed a white man to bring him out of debt? How racist is that? Because he's saying, yeah, he was in debt until
that's going to trigger
up.
him. That's going to trigger him.
Well, then,
that's going to trigger him if he said that.
Well, I did say that, and I made a mention of the fact that I didn't mean it, right? But my whole point of making that point was to show him how easy it is to do what he does, which is falsely accuse people of racism when they get to his left. That's what he did as the HRC henchman of 2016, right? All the Bernie bros were racist and sexist, right? So I said, so you're saying he needed a white man to bring him out of debt? How racist is that? See how easy it is to make cheap identity politics barbs, whether they're true or not. Oh, wait, of course you do. That's your bread and butter, right? So Jimmy retweeted.
Yeah, that's triggering. Yeah, that's triggering, right?
Yeah, I guess that pissed him off a little bit.
Yes.
So Jimmy retweeted both of those, and then forgive me if I get a little out of order here because this is where the Twitter machine gets a
This
little
is where
confusing.
it kind of gets crazy. Yeah.
Hang on. At the top, what did he say?
Well, no, this is before that. So,
okay, I got you.
So Jimmy,
wait, can you pause here because
sure, of course,
it feels like he went overboard with the JB tweet, like JB just announcing. It feels like he took JB. He took, based on his tweet response, it feels like he took the word stage right to mean he was right wing. Like exit stage right. It feels like that's how he took it because his response was, well, if I did this, is it stage left or stage right? Meaning, that's what it feels like how he took it. Maybe I'm wrong, but go ahead, continue.
Look, he could spin this however he wants. He could talk about polling. He could talk about funding. The bottom line is when Peter Daou entered, Cornel had ballot access in 17 states and a campaign infrastructure at his disposal. When Peter Daou leaves, he has ballot access in 0 states with nothing to show for his campaign. So that's the legacy of Peter Daou as it pertains to the Cornel West campaign. You could talk about cash on hand. You could talk about polling. And by the way, he doesn't have 9% polling anymore. The 9% polling was when Peter left. Now that Peter's left and he's got no campaign and no Green Party behind him, he's back down in, 2 or 3 points. But anyway, So anyway, Jimmy, saw that. He screenshotted that. He tweeted this out. Before you joined Cornel West campaign, he had ballot access in 18 states. After you, he has ballot access in 0 states. That was your true mission, and everyone sees it. Now tell Hilary and the DNC hello from all of us, infiltrator. Now, I guess Peter responded to him. This is where I kind of lost track of things, but I just, I retweeted Jimmy since he retweeted me, so I figure I should return the favor. So, and it's a good thing I did because now these are all stored in my backlog here. Fact, Dr. West made his own decisions from leaving the Green Party to taking Harlan Crow's donation against my advice. Unlike you, I respect that a prominent black intellectual is capable of calling his own shots, for better or worse. Yeah. His campaign was in debt and disarray when I joined. I left it with an effective structure and $100,000. Go ask him and his team. You and others who are too cowardly to admit you want to tear him down snipe at me instead for the bank shot against him. It's pathetic, Jimmy. All right, so now Jimmy responds here. Fact, you take all the credit for anything good that happened on Cornel West's campaign and then blame a black man for all the obvious sabotage and screw-ups that have tanked his campaign. Yes, that's a good point. Very racist behavior for a nonstop virtue-signaling ally, ain't it? Yes, I think that's a good point. You're an infiltrator, has such a bad case of PTSD that you quit his campaign after tanking it and immediately went back to warring with and attacking your good faith critics. Yeah, that's exactly. He didn't take a mental hit. Dude, if you're going to take a mental health break, take a mental health break. Don't say you're taking a mental health break and then immediately, not even a day's rest, immediately start going after people who criticize you.
Come on, guys. This is obviously not a mental health break, and I get it when we say we want to give people the benefit of the doubt and we want to take mental health, but if nobody else wants to say it, we can clearly call out when people are using it. And this guy's using it.
He needs a new therapist, that's for sure.
Right. I don't have any sort of sympathy for this supposed PTSD for this guy. I don't have any sympathy for that. Just in the same way, I don't you have a PTSD for all the smearing you did of the Bernie Sanders people from 2016. You get what I'm saying? Like, we're supposed to feel sorry for you. This guy is absolutely using mental health as a crutch to get out. Just like what he does. This is all he understands what to do. Use a otherwise real issue to shield and cover for me so that people don't attack me for what I'm doing. Instead of, let me use this shield of mental health. It was the same thing he used with Marianne Williamson. Mental health, my mom. Like,
his mom is in hospice or something like that.
I'm so surprised that it was mental health. I thought it was some other medical health, because mental health after having a campaign for 2 weeks, for for 3 weeks.
About a month and a half, he was part of the campaign.
Yeah, like I don't understand.
Like,
a month and a
Well,
half,
he's claiming that he's triggered by the news out of Israel-Palestine, and I made this point in our segment. We all are. Well, look, we all are upset by this. Like,
he's not alone in this.
He's not alone in this. I'm a parent. I have 2 4-year-old kids. Every time I see a video of a kid maimed or injured or killed, or a kid who just lost his mother or his father, I think every single time without fail, what if that were my kid? Or what if that were me? Or what if that were my wife? You know, it's very triggering. It's very upsetting. You know, that doesn't mean I stopped doing the show. You know, that doesn't mean we stopped doing what we're doing. You know, so you know, but look, whether or not that, like, even giving him the benefit of every doubt, and I understand, CJ, you don't want to, and that's fine. But I'm saying even giving him the benefit of every doubt, he's clearly not acting in a way that suggests he's caring for his mental health. And this is what Jimmy says. Is that what your doctor recommended to help treat your horrible case of PTSD? To come on and start warring with people? Fact, you're an obvious garbage person who lies and twists reality whenever it suits your agenda. And I'm glad you engaged me. So now more people can get to see how transparent a grifting liar you are. Tell Hilary, DC, and the DNC, hi from all of us.
Yes,
and then he said
Twitter,
something else.
That famous balm for the soul, that famous refuge for those suffering mental health crises.
Well, Peter said something else to him, and I don't have this here in my thing. I don't, for some reason, this is not in my
gentlemen.
queue. Yes. Nope, sorry. This is it right here.
Okay, go ahead.
This is it. Why don't you just admit you wanted a job? So this is to Jimmy. Why don't you just admit you wanted a job as an advisor to West and you didn't get it? Instead of using me as a bank shot to lash out at him, have the guts to go after him directly. Now, this strikes me as absolutely absurd.
What?
I know that Jimmy reached out and offered his advice, offered, to help with PR and things like that, or, interview strategy and things like that. I doubt very, very much that Jimmy Dore wanted a job on the campaign. Yeah. Because if he took a job,
when would he do it?
When would he do it between the comedy shows and his show? And also, I'm not 100% sure of, but I assume that if you take a paid position on a presidential campaign, that presents a conflict of interest with your show as a political commentator. And it's not for me to speculate how much money's he's making off his YouTube show, but I can say pretty safely it's got to be a hell of a lot more than the Green Party could afford to pay him for consultant work. So why the hell would he be angling for a paid position at the Cornel West campaign and be so enraged that he didn't get one? That's not what happened at all. That's absurd. That's ludicrous.
So what is this about the Vanguard guys?
That I don't know.
I can bring up that.
If I could bring up something here, gentlemen, how does it feel to once again be proven correct on the fact that Peter Daou was not only what we were saying that he would be, that he would somehow dismantle the Dr. Cornel West campaign, but more importantly, leave it rudderless and stuck in the water, stuck in the mud, where I can't see how Cornel West is going to keep on pushing forward after the damage that Daou did. He contributed nothing. What? That the campaign was in financial problems, and now what? They got 100K plus, and the 9% that's no longer 9%. Peter Daou was everything that we said he would be, and now he's rage attacking anyone that was critical of him, calling us ops and operatives and infiltrators. He's projecting because that's what he is. And dare I say it, we could go to extra mile and say Peter Daou probably was put in that position and wormed his way in. And what does it say about Jill Stein and Dr. West about reading a character?
Yes.
And
then one other thing here too.
Go ahead.
Look, not to bring up this interview, but look, Jimmy Dore, when he was interviewing Dr. Cornel West, and Jimmy just says, hey, who's advising you? Who is advising you? And Dr. West, are you able to critically read people? I know you try and see the best in people, and that's an admirable trait, but that's also how you get backstabbed 1,000 times.
Look, the bottom line, whatever he wants to talk about, poll numbers, fundraising, all this, the bottom line is, given the state of things and given the time that Cornel entered the race, his horse in this race was the Green Party. Without the Green Party, he had no horse. Without no horse, you can't run the race. The Green Party was the horse. Now, if they were giving you problems, it then falls upon you to do what Bernie tried to do in the Democratic Party in 2016, which is flood the Green Party with your people and overcome whatever apparatus is working against you or stifling you, right?
That could have been done.
It could have been done because Cornel's way more popular than anyone at the Green Party. It's not like when Bernie was doing it in 2016, he was going up against Hilary Clinton, right? He's going up against the most prominent and well-connected member of that party. Who's the most prominent, well-connected member of the Greens? What, Jill Stein? And she was on his team. She was advising him.
Right,
so she wasn't an obstacle. Howie Hawkins? You're telling me you can't overcome Howie Hawkins or Davi, whoever the fuck that guy is, right? I mean, come on. If your chance was to use the infrastructure and ballot access of the Green Party to launch a challenge to the duopoly, not that you were going to beat them, but the Green Party had the infrastructure in place and the ballot access in place where that was your chance to make it happen. And Peter Daou can say whatever the fuck he wants about fundraising, about what was the other thing that he said that he was so happy about?
Fundraising,
polling,
9%, yeah,
right, polling,
9%.
fundraising, polling. The bottom line is, the connection to the Green Party fell apart on his watch. Therefore, the campaign crumbled on his watch. That's it. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Without the Green Party, you have no campaign. That fell apart. Maybe it wasn't Peter Dow's fault, but it doesn't look good. That
it doesn't look good.
6 weeks after you join, his entire apparatus just crumbles.
One other thing here too, in not only one but 3 different interviews, Brianna Joy Gray, Sabby Sabs, and Tim Black, we saw Peter Daou say how tough it is to be a campaign manager and have the audacity to say, look, I know how to run it better. And, if you really think it's an easy job, there's very few people like me. Peter, once again, you petered out. So you said all that stuff and not in 1, but 3 interviews trying to hype yourself up as this person. Look, I'm waiting and I'm dreading for this for all of us to cover this when Dr. West drops out of the race and says we got to support Biden, whoever the Democrat nominee is going to be. I could just see it happening, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to see it happen because Dr. West said he's going to go through all the way to the end. But how are you going to make it to the end?
No, he's
when
not.
your campaign is zits,
Well,
zero,
the end, what
done.
does that mean? He needs now 332,000 combined signatures to get ballot access in California and Texas, which are the 2 most populous states in
he ain't gonna do it.
country. The Greens already had ballot access in both of those places. So by losing the Green Party ballot line, he set himself back 332,000 signatures, and that's the technical amount you need. In reality, he needs more like 500,000 because of all the signatures.
Yeah,
that
he's
get
going to
thrown
need
out.
way more than that.
Right.
To go
No,
higher.
Everybody's time.
Yeah,
How are you getting that? I mean, how are you even getting it? Just those. That's just for 2 states. How are you even getting 500,000 signatures?
He's not going to get in Illinois. I mean, my
that's
state
why-
is draconian towards third parties and independents. And I was saying that on my show, like, how are you going to do it? Illinois, if you dot your I's wrong, cross your T's wrong, your name is off the roster. I've interviewed so many Illinois libertarians and Greens and independents who try to get on the ballot.
Oh, and this is another thing I forgot to bring up, but this was an interesting point because the person I talked to who knew a little bit more, who knew actually quite a bit more about how this went down, they were telling me, and this is going to be an obstacle for RFK also, that anybody who votes in the state of Texas, if you vote, so in the state of Texas, you need 113,000 signatures as an independent to qualify for access. You need to get those 113,000 signatures from independent voters, meaning voters who did not vote in the Democratic or Republican primary. So if you vote in the Democratic or Republican primary, you are not eligible to sign an independent candidate's ballot access petition. That's thrown out. Come on. I mean, at that point,
it makes
it's not happening. That makes it way harder because the people who are most inclined to sign a petition are people who are engaged in the process. They're going to be likely primary voters. So these are the obstacles they throw in your way, which is why you need an existing ballot line so that you don't have to do all that shit. There's no way this is happening.
Well,
Go ahead, Russell.
we had a guy call in
sorry,
from
go
the
ahead,
Green. We had a guy call in from the Green Party last night, actually, on our show. And, as a Green Party member, I guess he was holding out some hope. He was saying, yeah, it would be messy, but Cornel could come back. And I told him, we both told, what our theory of the case is Cornel thought about who he was going to piss off if he actually ran a real campaign, and he decided to run a fake one. I keep comparing it to the line in Glengarry Glen Ross when he says, "They just like to talk to salesmen." He just likes to talk to podcasters. He wants to keep going around and talking to podcasters. Everything that he has done demonstrates somebody who doesn't actually want this campaign to go anywhere. He wants to say he's running for president. He does not actually want to run for president. He doesn't want to be Nadert. He doesn't want to be persona non grata around the CNN studios. When you look at it through that lens, everything he's done makes total sense.
It makes total sense. And let me read this from a couple of tweets here. Where Peter Daou says the ops and infiltrators are the ones who use me for clicks to try to take down Cornel West. You know who you are. Heartland's Media, aka Kit, responds this way. No, or let me let you read it because you'll read it with the same emotion and gusto. Go ahead.
Actually, I wish I put a little bit more nose in it. No, you are projecting. What exactly have you done to secure ballot access or anything more than the 1.5 months you were with the West campaign? Stop projecting, and the criticism against you is valid. That's how you should.
And you had another banger right here.
Yeah,
I'll read Peter's and then you read yours. Peter says, actually, this is the main one he said, and I'll just kind of read the first sentence. You're left wing in the sense of denying that a prominent black scholar makes his own decisions about his campaign while minimizing my PTSD. And what say you, Kit? What did you have to say about that? Go ahead.
Curious. I thought Daou needed to rest, yet throughout the time he left the West campaign, he has been on a Twitter storm against those who have criticized him. People have a right to question what you did, and Due Dissidence has a right to question you. Just like JB, just like RBN, just like Jimmy Dore, just like everyone else. Look, folks, stick a fork in the West campaign. It's over. Okay? Peter Daou effectively ended it, and West's inability to actually lead and read people, it's wasted all of our time, and I'm actually enraged at the fact of just how pathetic and mediocre the West campaign has ended. I can't see them pulling this out. But hey, look, it's the Vanguard. What do they got to say?
Yeah, here goes the Vanguard chiming in here. So this is the tweet that they're quote tweeting. So effing sick of the clowns and cowards who use me for clicks to attack Cornel West. They didn't have the courage to admit they didn't want to tear him down. And I don't need to read the rest of it, but this is what the Vanguard says. The third-party movement in America has never been in a more embarrassing place than it is right now. Let's be honest. Just an endless circular firing squad of terminally online losers with no solidarity, let alone an actual strategy to accomplish literally everything. That comment from the Vanguard feels like it has nothing to do with policy. It feels all to do with emotion about them being the sort of the court jesters of the left. I mean, that's who they are. Everybody kind of makes fun of the Vanguard, and it feels like that's a tweet wrapped in emotion and not wrapped in like factual or chronological historical facts. So, but anybody else want to chime in before we close this with the Vanguard? And I know all of you hadn't had a chance to see it, but what do you think the point they're making here? Anyone who wants to
here's their point. Look, they're the kind of people who are dismissing a third party or independent movement, all the while they're still hopping onto the Democratic Party. Like, see, you're wasting your time with third parties, so still vote Democrat and support Marianne Williamson's glorified book tour. That's what they're trying to say here, okay? And that's about it.
Okay. We pride ourselves on being, honest brokers, and as much as we've had beefs with the Vanguard, we also owe a lot to Beavis and Butthead over there. Their interview with their infamous attack on Aaron Mate launched our channel. So we have a debt of gratitude to those boys. But look, they're not wrong. I mean, it's not even clear to me that they're really defending Daou so much as they're making a general observation. So I'm not going to go after them just, because we've had beefs in the past. Like, yeah, they're right. Like, I don't disagree with anything that they're saying there. It's fucking true. We've said it on our show. Not specifically with that framing, but if you look at what this first post-Bernie election cycle is looking like, what a fucking clown show. Oh my God, what a cast of characters. You got the you got the Topanga Canyon hippie over there on the book tour. You got Mr. Yes, I believe that AIDS is a virus, but let me explain to you for 2 chapters why it's a made up illness. RFK over there. And then you got the jazz man here who's played a melody line right out of ballot access there. He's jammed his way right into irrelevance.
Libertarians can't get anybody.
Is that what's going on with them?
Well, they apparently, what's the guy's name? The guy, he's been on Pasta Show, Dave Smith. He was going to do it, and then he chickened out. And so they were putting all their eggs in that basket, and then he decided he didn't want to do it because he didn't want people to ruin his life, because that's what will happen. They'll ruin your life if you run a serious third-party campaign, just like they tried to do with Cornel with the child support and the taxes and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So apparently he's not running. So now they don't have any. Like they're scrambling now. So like it's
right.
Amazing.
And you look at the Greens, and I we talked a little bit about it with the guy who called in about this. Somebody who was like a ranking person in the Green Party tweeted out that Cornel left the Greens the day after they told him he was going to have to fix his position on transgender athletes, and they wanted to have a meeting with him. What a fucking clown show that is in and of itself. Like like what they're saying, that there are just these ridiculous internecine divisions and just aimless fighting for no reason. I mean, again, it's not clear to me they're saying that in defense of Daou. It just seems like an overall commentary on on this whole line of conversation. And hey, man, I mean, it can't just go after him to go after him. I mean, they're not wrong.
I think both of you are clarifying sort of what I said, and because both can be true, and that is, it feels like the words, and let me clarify, it feels like the words that they're saying is true, but what they're meaning behind the words is not what we're talking about. And I think that's a better way of saying it, because what they're saying is true. The third party movement is in disarray. I wouldn't call it embarrassing, but I would call it a disarray. Now, this is the part, the endless circling, firing squad of online, like that's the part where I feel like it strays away from an actual critique of what's happening with the third party movement, and that's just them being upset, because he goes on and says, let alone an actual strategy to accomplish literally anything, because that part would absolutely be incorrect, because there's strategies that we talk about all the time when it comes to this particular area. But the third party movement, in my opinion, is in disarray because of people like the Vanguard. It's not because of people like us, for example. It's for people like the Vanguard who straddled the line between third party and Democratic Party. It's not because of people who are us, who are totally in on third parties and totally out of the Democratic Party. But go ahead, somebody else.
Can I add something here too, like in regards to third parties, because we got the infrastructure too, like the people who run third parties. The Greens in Illinois and Indiana, for example, have been so pathetic, and especially covering them way early on, 2017, 2018, 2019, after the aftermath of 2016. There was an opportunity for them to gain ground, and while I covered those events, they went from these large event areas, and the events kept on getting smaller, less people were showing up. So there's also the infrastructure.
Which party is this? Green Party?
Yeah, the Illinois Green Party, Illinois, Indiana, Indiana Green Party, the Illinois Green Party. It's just they have been mediocre and subpar at best.
Okay, so one point I will make about the Vanguard as a source, they do tend to say things like this while at the same time playing those games and swimming in those waters themselves. If you saw their interview with friend of show Tim Black. You know, there was.
I did not.
There was. It was interesting because there was a lot of you know, basically attacking people for doing exactly what they do, which is to attack people, right? So, I mean, to talk about people being online and attacking each other when that's basically your business model. There is that. But, you know, from the mouths of babes, you know, the statement itself is not untrue.
Well, I also think, you know, one of the things that attracts people to third parties is that they are nonconformists. But obviously, conformity can be an asset when it comes to organizing political movements and political structures, right? You need a certain amount of conformity because you need a certain amount of cooperation. And I think, you know, people who are drawn to third parties sort of by definition reject that way of thinking, which makes them just kind of structurally difficult to organize. But that's what's important about a big moment like this, where there's a cause that is so obvious and so dire that it just brings a lot of people out into the streets and organizing and talking to each other. And, you know, these provide opportunities to sort of transcend whatever differences we might have. In terms of this election cycle, it looks like it's too late, which is unfortunate. RFK's polling is very strong. He raised $11 million, which is a huge haul. Now, obviously, I'm not going to come up here and say a kind word about a guy who is to the right of Donald Trump on genocide, okay? But I will just say, if there is a candidate in this race at this point that can, you know, throw a wrench into the two-party system, it's him. Now, once again, I want to be 100% clear. That is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement or even a suggestion that people should view his candidacy well, because this issue obviously has presented itself as a disqualifier. But I'm just telling you like it is. His polling is at 20%. He's got a lot of cash on hand. He's got an inner circle of people who could probably put together a team very quickly if he plays his cards right. That could be the only game in town in terms of a meaningful third-party effort this cycle. And it's only meaningful insofar as it causes chaos within the system. It's not meaningful in terms of anything that we could support. Obviously, being to the right of Donald Trump on genocide, that's a non-starter. And it's a shame that that's where we're at, because there was an opportunity for a real substantive third-party candidate to do well this time. As is indicated, not just in RFK's polling, but in fucking Cornel's polling. I mean, Cornel,
he was doing well.
He's still, I mean, his national polls are down, but a new poll came out of Georgia. He's at 5% in Georgia, in a swing state where you got a lot of people very anxious about, you know, not voting blue because it's a razor thin margin. So his polls are still pretty good. Unfortunately, he's not going to be on any ballots.
That is facts. I think I'm gonna bump the Ritchie Torres story. I'm tired. We can wind.
Yeah, fuck him.
Fuck Torres.
Yeah, we can wind down. But I do have some questions. Tell me about how the protest went, Russell, when you was down there. I haven't seen. I know it's been a week or more since you and Jose Vega did your thing, but tell us how.
Oh, you're talking about Maddow.
It's been a while since then.
Speaking of Jose,
tell us how it went. Go ahead.
Speaking of Jose, sorry, Russell, to cut you off, but Kynan, who's Jose's friend, Jose's sort of partner in crime, just intervened on Adam Kinzinger.
Yeah. Did he?
That's blowing up on Twitter now, so we're going to cover that Wednesday for sure. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
Send that over.
We're covering on All Hallows Eve tomorrow, so please be safe, everyone, especially if we're going trick or treating.
Yeah.
You know, it was pretty interesting. You know, Jose told me, you know, we sat separately, and he told me, I'm not sitting through this boring shit. As soon as she starts reading, I'm going. I was like, all right. So as soon as she started reading her book, I started filming, and true to his word, you could see what I shot. Like, as soon as I started filming, that's not edited at all. Boom. She's 2 lines into that book. He's like, "You're a warm." Then, I waited until they had a Q&A, but not like from the audience. They took index cards and they had Ben Stiller up there interviewing her, and he would read people's questions here and there. It was really interesting watching how she worked that crowd and worked that room, because it really showed you the essence of how she's built this career. She has a great instinct for telling this kind of brain dead shit lib exactly what they want to hear and nothing else. She gives them pure heroine version of their narrative, of their preferred narrative. And at the same time, she's smart enough, as a rule, not to say anything that she can't be excused for or talk her way out of later. So this entire evening, this is in a synagogue. This is in the largest synagogue in New York, right? In the middle of this. And that was just by coincidence. Obviously, the book tour was scheduled before this happened in Israel. And her book happens to be about the history of fascism in America. So what's Rachel Maddow's intention of writing a book like that? So that the brain dead libs can see a parallel to Donald Trump supporters, right? That's the point. But now it takes on a whole other meaning, especially in this venue with this particular audience. So Maddow kept giving little asides that played to their Zionist notion of anti-Semitism exploding in the form of Palestinian protests, but she never says it. She never says it. The reason that I yelled what I yelled about Netanyahu being an authoritarian leader is because she gave them an aside about, so we're seeing around the world this explosion of foreign authoritarian leaders. Okay, so that's not what Netanyahu is then? All night long, she very subtly tied the themes of fascism in America to their particular concerns without ever saying anything you could directly nail her on. It was a very interesting insight into how she operates to watch her work the crowd that way for an hour.
She is very good. A person to be that skilled in what you're describing is a person who almost studies propaganda, not just kind of trains in it. You study it.
Well, you know what?
Like to understand it that way. But go ahead.
Yes, you're exactly right. Because as part of my research preparation for this, I read the Vanity Fair profile on her, and one of the nuggets in it is that she treated Roger Ailes, the real architect of Fox News, as a mentor, that she went to him for tips on how to be a better broadcaster. That makes total sense because so many people have observed she's like a Sean Hannity for the liberal class, and that's not an accident. She took her cues from the person who invented Fox News, and you can really see that when you sit there for an hour and watch her work a room of hysterical Zionists without ever saying anything that you could nail her on later. She never says, yes, and we need to do this in Palestine. She didn't have to. It was implicit in all of her framing and everything she said without her ever actually saying anything at all.
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, I think we have come to the end. We don't have any more super chats. I'll check in just a second and see if there's any, but I think I read all of them. So then let's talk about what's next. When's your next broadcast? Any heads up on any other topics? If any other protest action that you heard of you want to shout out, even if you're not attending. We can start with Kit. Kit, you on live tomorrow morning, and
always
what's on the agenda?
Always Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Central on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, and Kick. We got our Can TV show as well. My interview with Russell will be on Can TV, so that's going to be pretty awesome. So there you go. But yeah, we'll be talking about Jose's colleagues calling out that congressman. We also got how Zelensky is no longer, or people are no longer believing in his absolute victory in Ukraine, which is, it's like, well, how is he going back then? How he is doing now? It's completely like night and day now that another war has superseded the war in Ukraine and other political issues as well. Plus, let's
This
face
guy's
it,
a loser. Israel, at least they win. Israel's a winner. This guy's a loser.
also, yes, we will be talking a little bit more about the protests happening here in Chicago. I know, obviously, there was a big one that happened. Yeah, we talked about earlier on Saturday, but we'll see if it continues on and how Brandon Johnson is addressing his city. And obviously, he says his mayor administration has been an absolute disaster. So the DNC convention will be epic in 2024 here in Chicago. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, that's gonna be
Nice.
That's gonna be pretty crazy.
And Keaton or Russell, whoever wants to go first. What's up next for you guys? Any topics you want to tell us
Well,
about?
tomorrow we're gonna just do some fun fan service for Halloween. We're going on at 2:00 in the afternoon, where Russell and I are counting down some of our favorite dissident horror films, sort of politically themed horror movies, just for a little bit of a respite, because we like to do a Halloween episode every year. So we were going to do our Halloween episode last night, which basically just means dressing up in costume and rearranging the set. But we thought we would look pretty ridiculous talking about genocide dressed as Halloween characters. We thought that would be distasteful.
Yeah.
So we decided to just do a special, just 1 hour fun little escapist broadcast tomorrow at 2:00. But we will be back in serious form, obviously, the very next day, Wednesday. And Wednesday's show will be a matinee because we have a prior engagement that evening. So Wednesday's show will be at 2:00.
Right on. Anything, Russell, you wanted to shout out? Any books you wanted to shout out before we get out of here?
Any books? Well, let's see. Here we go. There it is. I told you it was behind me. Radical Chic and Mau Mauing the Flak Catchers. That's on your reading list from tonight's episode.
Beautiful.
Awesome. All right, gentlemen, I think that's going to be it. I'm thinking the second week of November. I can't remember. I sent the dates in the chat, but I'm hoping we can do 2 post-duopoly shows in November. They don't fall on Thanksgiving, so it just so happens they don't fall on Thanksgiving, so that's a good thing. But if we're able to do it, guys, just confirm that in the DM. I'm gonna put you in the back. This was a great episode. Make sure you hit that like button, everybody, as we're rounding the end of the episode here. And what I'm going to do is just shout out our website, shout out our merchandise, and throw up our email if you need to contact us for that reason. But here is our merchandise page. So you go to our website and you're able to check out our merchandise. Right now we have 11 designs, and those 11 designs you can get on mugs, you can get on tote bags, or you can get them on clothing like a t-shirt, like a tank top, like a sweatshirt, and a hoodie. And let me pull up this hoodie right here. If you roll over the design, you can get a close-up of the graphic. This is our RBN one. You got the red. That's the one I think I'm going to get. And then you got the green. You can get it in black. Let me click it. Come on. Computer is really slow. That's why I'm raising money for, I'll put my fundraiser up in a second. Then it comes in white, and you can also get it, come on, in gray. All right. It's pressing the button, I guess. All right, I'll leave it there in green. So, all right, so that's where you can, I'm shouting that out. So if you wanted to check it out, please do. Here is the website right there. And then I'll put up, what do I have here? One last thing before I go. It's in my downloads. I think it's in my downloads. Let's see here. It's this. So, launching a fundraiser for new equipment is, so all of the issues I'm having when I'm streaming is the computer is not the internet. So there is a GoFundMe that we have created to raise funds to upgrade my streaming equipment, my work equipment, since this is like work. So CJ's fundraiser for equipment. There's wiring that has a short, of course, charger, laptop. Need to get upgraded. So if you're able to donate, there is the GoFundMe. This is just launching, so there has been no donations yet. Why don't you be the first or second donator on this fundraiser? If you do that right now, you'll be the first, second, third, one of the first people to donate to the fundraiser just launching. I'll also have it scrolling. Where is it? I'll also have it scrolling there at the bottom. I think that's it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing here. I am hot. Yeah, that jacket is kind of fire. I do like that. I do like that jacket. Or I guess hoodie. It's like a jacket though. But yeah, I like that in green. I also like the red though. So I'm not sure I'll do that one. But there's other things. Let's go to a classic long sleeve shirt. You can get a long sleeve shirt. You can get that in different colors, blue. That was like a brownish color. You can get it white also. Then there's tank tops. You got blue. I don't know what this is, like a black navy blue. And it's a royal blue and a navy blue. So there you go, everybody. If you are interested in any of our merchandise, all you have to do is go to our website, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. It's our full name, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. Also, so when you go to our website, this is it, and it's the hyperlink right here, top right corner. RBN merchandise, but you can check out a lot of stuff on the website, our story, some of the things, cornerstones that we believe in, who we are, and then of course our latest, they just dropped that video. So I think I will end with that video. Yeah, I think I'll end with that video. So all of us went to a Palestinian protest or march, all of the members, and we all got footage. And oops, it's the wrong one. We all got footage, and it looks like, I'm sorry, we all got footage, and Erin put them all together. She edited them all together, and I just got a notification that we have that. So I'm gonna go see if I can. I want to play it as an outro video. So let's go there. Let's see where it's at. Yeah, right here. So, it says upcoming. Oh, so it's tomorrow. So my bad, everybody. So it's not right now. So the video premieres. Where's JB on here? But anyway, it says Free Palestine, RBN hits the street. So this video will be premiering tomorrow. Make sure you check it out. It just shows all of our all of us at different marches in each city. So the 5 cities, and just shows us at those marches. So let me see if there's anything else. Anything else? See how slow this computer is moving? I'm clicking it. It's gonna go. There we go. See? Told you. There's lots to get to. I think I will glow. There's lots of videos that I can cover here. It's a good one to end with. Man, this is a lot. This is a lot. I do need to go. I need an assistant. That's what. Oh shit! I'm shooting the shit here. I need to get off here. All right, I'm gonna get off. I'm just shooting the shit like we're just chilling. All right, everybody. I'm gonna be heading out. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button on your way out. And here's another continuation of that video on how Israel was created. Hit that like button again on your way out. Thank you for watching the Post-Duopoly show.
Immigration. To the Zionists, this felt like a betrayal. In response, some set off bombs across the country, killing dozens of Palestinians. But soon, everyone was distracted by something much bigger. More than 60 million people were killed in World War II, including 6 million Jews murdered in Nazi death camps. Jewish survivors fled Europe, with a large number of them trying to find safety in Palestine despite the British limit on Jewish immigration. This set off a more direct confrontation between the Zionists and the British, with Palestinians often targeted as well. The Zionists knew two things. Militarily, they were stronger than the Palestinians, and Britain was exhausted by World War II, so it wouldn't have the stomach to keep fighting in Palestine. They were right. In 1947, after 30 years of occupation, Britain announced it was quitting Palestine and asked the newly formed United Nations to clean up its mess. Alright, 1947 and 1948 are the most pivotal years in this story, so let's take a look at how things are lining up. During British rule, Jews had gone from 10% to 30% of the population, and owned about 6% of the land. Under Ben-Gurion's leadership, the Jewish Agency was pretty much functioning as a government for the Jewish community. And the Zionist militias had tens of thousands of soldiers, modern weapons, and officers who'd already fought in World War II. On the other side, the Palestinians hadn't been allowed to develop their own administration or military. But as they waited for the UN's solution, they were still the majority all over the country. In November 1947, the UN, then only made up of a fraction of the world's countries, voted to partition Palestine. This plan marked off 55% of the country for a Jewish state, but the UN never explained how it could be a Jewish state when half the people in its territory were Palestinian. To nobody's surprise, Palestinians, and in fact all Arabs, rejected the UN's plan. Ben-Gurion and the Zionist leadership accepted, but they saw an opportunity. With the British on the way out, the Zionists knew they would have the strongest military in Palestine. Their forces were instructed to seize more territory than they'd been awarded by the UN, and to do what was necessary to reduce the number of Palestinians in it. In cities like Haifa, the militia set off car bombs in Palestinian neighborhoods. They attacked villages and forced residents out.
Haganah troops have driven the Arabs out of the beleaguered city, taking many prisoners.
After inspecting parts of western Jerusalem that had been emptied of Palestinians, Ben-Gurion said,
"In many Arab neighborhoods in the West, you do not see even one Arab. If we persist, it is quite possible that in the next 6 or 8 months, there will be considerable changes in the country, and to our advantage."
One of the events that helped speed up these changes took place on April 9th, 1948, when the village of Deir Yassin was attacked. A British government report to the United Nations describes the scene. 250 people were killed in circumstances of great savagery. Women and children were stripped, lined up, photographed, and then slaughtered by automatic firing. The story of what happened at Deir Yassin set off panic all over the country. As news spread, people fled. fearing they would be next. Historians have recorded dozens of similar massacres during this period. Each time, they would result in entire communities fleeing.
תמיד הייתה הוראה של בן גוריון לגרש את האנשים משם. כבשנו את המקום, טרקטורים חרשו את המקום. חרשו. לא נשאר זכר שכבר. למה? לא רצו שתהיה, לא חזרה ולא זכר של המקום.
By the time Britain ended its mandate on May 15, 1948, 250,000 Palestinians had fled. The night before, David Ben-Gurion announced the founding of the State of Israel, with himself as its first prime minister. He was standing under a giant portrait of Herzl, 51 years after Herzl had predicted this very moment. The Zionist militias came together as the newly formed Israel Defense Forces, but the fighting wasn't over. With the British out of the